Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Little Rock Board of Directors meeting for June 19th, 2018. I'd like to welcome everyone who's in attendance here at City Hall and as we go about to do the city's business. And with that, Madam Clerk, if you would please read the roll.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Compuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Webb, Mayor Stodler.
Here. Let me call on City Director Lance Hine for the invocation.
Thank you, Mayor. If you ever would bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come here tonight to seek your will in what we do here in behalf of the citizens of Little Rock. Please protect all of our employees who are out working for us every day, police, fire, public works, fleet, as they do the service for us as citizens. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Police, fire, and public works.
We have a couple of presentations to start off our meeting. And let me call on, let's see, is Diana Long, please, to come forward and tell us about our Fresh Food Drive presentation.
Thank you so much, and I apologize. I really thought last week's meeting was a 6 o'clock meeting, so I got here an hour early at 5, but it was an hour late. So thank you. Thank you for letting me come back today. So this is just a new thing that we're kind of excited about at the Little Rock Farmers Market, and part of the reason we wanted to let y'all, our leaders of the city, know about it, but also those at home who may be watching the meetings tonight or later online, is because we have entered into a partnership to do a weekly fresh food drive at our farmers market. So that's between the market and the produce vendors, but also between the Arkansas Food Bank, the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance, and with some help from the Society of St. Andrews. So they'll be setting up a booth at the Little Rock Farmers Market, and it's really easy. All our patrons have to do, and they're very willing to do it, is to pick up a little bit extra here and there while they're doing their shopping, drop it off at the booth there, and they will connect that same day with our local food pantries so that we can offer some fresh food to people who depend so heavily on pantries. So I'm excited to say that we drew in 120 pounds of fresh food that we were able to collect and get out direct into those families' homes the very first day that we tried this. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about it today. I was really excited, Director Webb, that we were able to partner up with your organization too. So anyway, that's it. Thank y'all so much.
Well, thank you, and thanks for everything you do at the farmers market and, of course, at the river market itself. It's a great amenity for the city, and we're proud to be the owners of it.
We are.
You bet.
It's the best job in town, I think.
It's a good,
Thank
good
you.
project for our city. In our, 20th year now, I guess, right?
22.
22 years.
22.
22, wonderful.
Thanks again.
Okay, our next presentation is a presentation by about Central Arkansas Water. And let me call on Mr. Tad Bohannon to give us that report. Welcome, Tad.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Mayor and Directors. I don't get here near enough, so I will appreciate the opportunity to come. Before I dive into this, I want to just say a couple of things. Gene Fortson is our director, who's a representative with Central Arkansas Water, and we really appreciate him. But I also appreciate the city manager's office and the mayor, because I pick up the phone and call somebody, and they are always responsive and help out with whatever issues are there, and I really appreciate that. So if we can go to the first slide there, I got a few things I want to cover today. I'm going to be a little bit longer than the first presentation, but if I get too long, just cut me off. but I got a lot of good things I'd like to talk about. And this is just a short little outline of where we're going. And so we can go to the next slide there, and we'll just start with the outstanding utility. As you all know, we have great drinking water right there in the middle. We won the Arkansas Drinking Water Taste Contest this year, and it was unanimous. There were 3 judges. They all unanimously picked Central Arkansas Water as having the best tasting drinking water, so we are proud of that. And just like your all's financial team, we're really proud of our financial team that they've received the GFOA awards for financial reporting and budget presentation. And so we all work together on that, so appreciate that. Next, we are into community outreach. I've just shown a few of the things there. One is the power of water, and we call that teaching teachers. And this is our second summer of doing that, and we are offering professional development for teachers from the Little Rock School District to come in and receive science-oriented teacher education and professional education credits for their thing. There's a few pictures there. They were actually in our lab doing water. They were out in our watershed looking at what we do in the watershed and how we maintain water quality. They had a great time. For the past 2 years, it's been focused at junior high, and it's been so popular, they're asking us to also focus on the high school level and provide some education for those teachers too. So by next summer, we hope to have a high school teacher education program in place. Up on top is the Forest for Faucets. Those kids are from Martin Luther King, down on Martin Luther King Boulevard Elementary. We take them out into the watershed or into our treatment plants and teach them about water. The picture there on the lawn picture there on top is just a group picture. The other picture underneath the little tent, they're making a water distribution system. So they're learning about engineering and hydraulics and gravity and those things. So we do it. And then we've borrowed from the fire academy that the city has and the other Citizens Academy. And we do a Water Citizens Academy where we work with teaching customers about what we do. And we've done that twice now. And we'll be advertising again soon for participants to do that in the fall, and that seems to be a popular program for our customers of Central Arkansas Water. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about underground assets. We talk about that a lot when I come here. That's a picture of our crews working on a main break, not what we like to see. If you can go to the next slide. You may or may not have heard about this one. I hope it went so smoothly you never heard of it, but we actually had a 12-inch main break on Baseline Road. That top picture there is looking north. You can see Interstate 30 off in the background. What we got was a call that there's a bunch of water in the street and the pavement seems to be cracking, the asphalt seems to be cracking. So our crews went out and they had to dig into the street, which is the picture there with the jackhammer there, the picture of the pipe on top in the middle. You can see a longitudinal crack which is draining after the water got turned off over there on the side of the thing where you can see the water draining out. And then that's the repair pipe that was put in that's in wrap for security. And I guess what it all comes down to and why I wanted to bring that up when I'm talking about assets is that pipe was installed in 1957. So it's 61 years old. It's cast iron. It broke a little early for cast iron. That's usually not as long as they wait. But the other is that, we try to maintain and keep a replacement program in place so that we don't have the breaks. It's like when your tire blows out, and I think I've told you all that before. If you get them replaced on your schedule, it's a whole lot easier, and it's usually less expensive than if you wait till it blows out on the road, and then you got to get a tow truck or somebody out there, and it's a hassle when you're trying to get other things done. So we try to replace them on a more timely manner, but that's one that normally cast iron goes over 100 years, but that one broke a little early, but that's what that is. Next slide, please. This shows what we have been active in our pipeline aging pipe replacement. And if you look at the graph there, it's our different types of pipe. Galvanized pipe is our main issue with breaks per 100 miles of pipe. But you see that, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. That line is slowly declining as we replace galvanized pipe every year. And we're keeping that going and we're moving forward on that. Next slide, please. When you look at our old pipe that's past its estimated useful life versus the red line there for our pipes that are not past their useful life, you see that when the pipes exceed their useful life, they have a whole lot more propensity to break. And so that's why we're working to replace our older pipes. Next slide, please. If you back up a few years and looked at the 2014 financial plan moving forward, you'd see that we were working on main replacements. It's about an average of $1.4 million per year. Next slide, please. We did our new financial plan this year. I took over in 2016. We did do 1.4 million that year. It was a very wet year. We had the money budgeted, but we just couldn't get out there and dig because it was so wet that year. In 2017, we increased that to 2.1 million in main replacements. 2018, and you can see it going up in our financial forecast going forward that we're increasing the main replacements as we go forward every year. You can also see our total capital expenditures down there near the bottom. Next slide, please. We're also meeting with neighborhood groups and property owners in the area to see how we can improve our assets. That's a section there by a tank site on the left that we're looking to make some improvements to. In fact, we're going to be meeting back with that Property Owners Association for that area in late July. The Crystal Hill Pump Station is an area that, we can see where we can try to improve our property. And so if you know of areas where we have property that you don't think is being maintained or taken care of at the level that should be taken care of, I wish you'd let me know, because that's an area where we're focusing. We don't want CAW property to be the eyesore of the neighborhood. We do not want that happening. So let us know if there's something going on there that we don't know about. Next slide, please. You all have heard, I think, I haven't been shy about it. I'm talking about it everywhere I go, that we're looking at some solar projects for the area. This is just a headline that was in the news stations a few months ago. And so if you go on to the next one about greenhouse gases, our electric bill, 2017 was a low water consumption year. It was wet last year. If you remember, it rained all summer long. So our electric bill was down, and it was still almost $3 million. Maumelle, which is the pump station at the lake, was our largest bill, and then you can see some of our other bills there. Go to the next slide, please. So we're looking at ways to reduce that. One way is we're looking at potentially putting in a solar field at the Wilson Treatment Plant. That has come before the Planning Commission, and it was approved with no objections from the neighborhoods in the area. And so we're looking to put in solar there. It's green space that's around the plant right now. Those are actually underground tanks that we would be putting the cells on top of, but it would generate about 1.7 kilowatt hours to reduce our consumption there. We have been working with Entergy closely on this, and you see their comments there about that there's no potential impact and that we should move forward with the interconnection process. Next slide. We're also looking at Ozark on top of the treatment plant, at the Ozark treatment plant. That's probably a couple years off because we're doing a renovation of that plant, and it would be one of the last things that we put in as we redo the roof. So next slide. And then the one that gets people talking a little bit is we're looking at floating solar out on Lake Maumelle. Various different questions come up about it, water quality being the prime one. How are you going to protect the lake? That's our drinking water source. There are a number of areas already in the world that are floating solar cells on water bodies. There's no, from the reports that we've been getting and the analysis that we've been receiving, there's no negative impact to water quality. In fact, while the cells are out there, you actually get a positive impact because you lower the temperature of the water, thereby reducing the chance for algae growth. And so that's right there by our intake plant. And so we reduced the algae blooms. If you all remember, Toledo a few years ago had to shut down their water intake due to algae blooms. And so it can actually improve water quality. We're still exploring this. It's not a done deal yet, but we're still looking at it to see if it's cost efficient and what we can do there. Next. So if you add up those three projects, we get a reduction of about 12.5 in our kilowatt requirement that we need. And next slide, please. And so we're also looking at 2 off-site locations. The advantage of these is they would be on facilities that we already own. ANRC is offering us very favorable financing to do those. And then we're looking at 2 different off-site locations that we would just net meter against our energy usage. So you get a reduction. If you go to the next slide, we're looking at, and these are preliminary numbers, but savings in electrical bills of about $2 million a year at these production numbers. Now, you say, well, that means you can lower rates by $2 million. No, because there's a cost to doing this. And we're not going to proceed if the cost exceeds the savings. It's just that simple. So we haven't gone through the bid process yet. We haven't moved to that state. We're just exploring it, but I think we have an obligation to the ratepayers to see if there's an opportunity, one, to be more sustainable, and to two, save cost in the long run. But those are kind of the preliminary numbers we're looking at. Next slide, please. And maybe even more savings. We're looking at, those are turbines that you put in pipes where you have high pressure zones. And we have a number of those due to our hilly areas, that there might be ways that we can bleed the pressure off and use the pressure in the pipes to spin turbines, and those turbines would then generate electricity that we could use to offset our electrical consumption somewhere else. Next slide. Lake DeGray. Director Compuris' favorite topic. We've been working hard on Lake DeGray, and I know I've reported on it every year. Last fall, we reached an agreement with the Vicksburg District and SWAPA, which is the federal power regulatory for the hydropower that comes out of that. And we sent that agreement up to Washington, D.C., to the Corps headquarters, and the Corps headquarters said, well, we don't really like this agreement, but here's what we will say. CAW has the right to withdraw water from the lake, which is good news because we were going to have to take it from below the lake, which means we'd have to pump for about another 400 feet, and we don't want to pump that if we don't have to. And that second, that we would only have to pay for power for generation only if we withdraw water from the main reservoir before September 23rd of 2042, which the building time and the plan time to go get there and when we're going to need the water, it's highly unlikely that we would go before 2042. Which then saves us a little over $1 million a year in power forgone charges. And so the agreement is being reworked right now. We're supposed to get it back from tomorrow. We actually have it on our board agenda for Thursday for approval if we can move forward and get everything lined in place and get going on that. So we're really, we like the comments that came out from Washington, D.C., from the Corps headquarters. SWAPA was not thrilled with the comments that came back, but we're working to refinalize the agreement in terms that the headquarters sent back. Next slide. Need to talk to you all about a customer information system. What is a customer information system? Customer information system is our cash register, for lack of a better way to say it. I have those pictures of those old phones up there because our customer information system was purchased in 1997 at a time when you would have had a phone that looked like that, at a time when people couldn't pay their bills online on their phone, at a time when they couldn't receive text notifications of when there's an outage or when there's work in the area. So we don't have any of those capabilities. We don't have any of those things. The other thing is having a 20-year-old customer information system is that they are no longer going to service it. They've given us notice that we're no longer going to maintain that customer information system. So you need to do something else. So we've had a series of meetings with representatives from various different areas that use our billing system, which includes sanitation, and it includes Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority that use our billing system to get the bills out. And if you go to the next slide, it gives you a little idea about what our customer information system does. It bills on about 135,000 different accounts. We collect about $156 million annually, 67 of which is for the water portion, 80 million of divided between Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority and Little Rock Sanitation. We have a 99% collection rate. That's why everybody likes to use the water bill to be able to collect their different fees on and what have you. So we collect that, we present, and we handle the customer calls and bills and what have you. And I had 14 billing partners because that's who we had, and we've just signed on a 15th billing partner. And why is that important? Because the more billing partners we have, the more we can spread the cost out for the billing itself and the purchase of a new billing system and a new CIS system. So we're in the process of narrowing down. We put out an RFQ for billing systems. We're in the process of going through that selection process. We are meeting with representatives from all the different billing partners to get their input on different things. We'll try to make a selection sometime in August probably, so they'll start making starting working on the project, and it's about a 2-year project. We're not expecting completion prior to May of 2020 to install this new software and information to do it. So that's in the works, and we'll keep you updated on that as we move ahead and keep moving forward. Next. This is our last thing I'm really kind of proud of, and it's how do you define exceptional employee? And I want to tell you, this employee, if he was one of ours, would be getting a call from our safety supervisor to say, this is not good practice. But if you go to the next slide, for 2 years now, we've been working on how do we define an exceptional employee. And we define them as high VIP, high performing, innovative, values driven, informed, and passionate. Every employee meeting we have, we call out somebody and say, can you tell us what high VIP is? And they're getting good at it. They're figuring it out. And it's, we've been working on this, and it seems to be taking hold, and we're really excited about that. So we'll continue to work on that and make sure if you see our employees not being high VIP, I want to hear about it. And believe me, we have some customers that let me hear about it, but we try to work past it, and we try to do whatever training we need to do to make sure that our employees are high VIP. Next slide. And with that, I'm done. I told you I'd take a few more minutes. I hope I didn't take too long, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Okay, thank you, Tad. Director Campiris, you're first, please.
How'd you guess?
I knew it.
Go back to the late DeGray.
Okay.
He said it will save $1 million a year.
In power foregone charges, yes.
Right.
If we sign the agreement that was initially put before us, we were going to have to pay over $1 million a year in power foregone.
So I think that's a great deal. Is that money in your budget?
No.
Well, where were you going to get it if you had to do it?
We would have had to figure that one out. But you have to remember, we signed the agreement, the option to acquire the Lake DeGray rates in 1988. And so the actual payment of power foregone has never been in the budget since 1988, because we wouldn't have do it till we actually exercise the option and sign the water storage agreement. When we gave notice that we wanted to exercise the option, we immediately put into the budget the annual payments for the water storage. Those payments are in our budget.
Okay.
I told you all early on I was not going to pay the power foregone, and we never put it in the budget.
So is there any way, let's just assume Thursday you sign this agreement. Mm-hmm. Is there any way they can come back and cancel our ability to use the water in this lake?
My stock answer would be no. I mean, is there any way,
Well, there's always a way, but I mean,
it is a perpetual water storage agreement that we have the right to so many acre feet of water, if there's water there. It's space in the bowl, not guarantee of contents in the bowl. If that makes sense.
Yeah, the bowl's got to be full.
Bowl's got to be full, but if the bowl has enough water in it, then we will be able to take out our water.
And where does this put Hot Springs in this chain of?
They would have rights to 20 million gallons of the total 120 that we initially. So they would have 20 and we would have 100.
So there's a partnership between the two groups.
That's correct.
So that's not gone away with this new agreement. And is the agreement that you had before that they would, assuming that at that point in time that they were going to take water out before we did, that they would build the first phase of this extraction?
That agreement is still in place.
Okay, so that's still there too.
Yes.
Sounds like you've done a good job. I
We're working
appreciate
it. It's not signed yet. You never know when you're dealing with the core of the federal government, but we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Director Fortson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Ted, for the presentation. I'm one of those that thinks we're very fortunate with the quality of water we get to drink in this town. You've told us this before, and I guess I could deduct by looking at the DeGray timetable, but at present rate of consumption, what is the projected life of our existing water supply, Maumelle and Winona, et cetera?
At least 2070. And I say that because in In 1982, the engineers, which were conservative, said we'd need to go to Lake DeGray in 2040. In 2010, they said, well, it'll be 2060. I mean, it's the estimates for population growth and what have you, and when they occurred, there've been, it's when does it all get there that we're going to need that additional water. We produce we have the capability to produce 152 million gallons of water a day. Our max day right now is 129 million ever. You don't start spending the millions of dollars it's going to take to go get that actual water source until you're consistently running about 80%. And we're just not there. Our average day is 66 million gallons a day.
Thank you.
Tad, I've got a couple of questions on the, and this has to do with just the current rate structure you have for our citizens. With your capital budget for pipe replacement, refresh our memories now on we've approved our rate adjustments through what year?
Rate adjustments, you had a rate adjustment this year, and there's a rate adjustment in 2019.
In 2018, which we already have approved. 2019, which we've already approved,
That's
right?
correct.
So I assume that your pipe replacement takes into account, does it take into account no rate increase based on your capital request?
Yes, that financial plan, that 5-year financial plan is if there was no rate increase.
Okay. And next issue, do you keep track of the number of water breaks there are that citizens call in and have from the house to the main, to their mains?
House to main, I don't know that number off the top of my head. I can tell you that we get called that there's water leaking, where's it coming from? And then we go out and do the inspection, and then we tell people whether it's on our side of the meter or their side of the meter.
And is that a frequent request?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'd say there's probably one a week that they come out and say.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
Next question. Certainly, I want to applaud you for your desire to become more sustainable and certainly to reduce CO2 emissions and to find renewable energy, which certainly it looks like you're exploring that a lot. Is that, I assume you can do that without a rate increase, or is that going to be, how are you going to measure the cost-benefit ratio there for us?
My measurement is, right now we have an operating expense. We know what that operating expense, it's a cash outlay.
Right.
We will not do the project if the cash outlay for the capital costs more than what the current operating expense is, and we're looking at current dollars.
I see. Good. Okay, thank you.
We'd like to see a savings, but
Yeah. You're
but
telling me we're not going to get that savings, or the ratepayers are not going to get that savings if there is a substantial one?
it
Or it might
depends
delay
on
a
what the
rate
capital
increase?
cost comes in. Might delay a rate increase.
I see. Okay. Are there any other questions? Yes, Director Fortson, go ahead, please.
Going back to our earlier meeting, Tad, you explained what you were doing to try to levelize the pricing between retail and wholesale. Can you give us a quick summary of what that relationship is now and perhaps what the volume of wholesale is?
Should have brought some different slides, but I can do that. We have had a 10% increase, a 10% increase, and a 10% increase for wholesale customers, and there's a scheduled number 5% increase next year. So in the last resolution that was passed for wholesale rates, there was a 35% increase over a 4-year period. Wholesale sales have declined. There was a discussion at the last time when we were talking about what wholesale rates should be and that there's price elasticity and all those various issues as to what should happen. And what we've seen is that our wholesale customers have gone and looked for other water sources due to the price increases. Jacksonville is getting more water out of the Lone Oak Water Pipeline. Cabot is now exploring joining the Lone Oak White Party. The Saline County water users are have purchased property on the Ouachita River to potentially in the future put in their own water supply source coming out of the Ouachita River. I think I can fairly characterize it as even if it cost them more money, they are prepared to go get water from another water source rather than using our water, just because they have some control over it.
Director Hines, you recognize, please.
Ted, that brings a question to mind. Didn't we fund almost half of the cost to extend wholesale water line to Cabot?
Cabot has a contract with us to buy minimum water quality and quantity, and they're not, and that also pushes water to Jacksonville and also pushes water around to the north part of our supply system that we supply directly on retail.
And wasn't it Cabot that wasn't meeting their minimum purchase requirements?
No,
Jacksonville was,
not.
okay. Has that been settled?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Go ahead.
one other question.
Okay.
So we don't have any agreements on minimum, we do have a minimum purchase
do.
agreement
We
with
do have-
Cabot to recap our
We do
our
have a minimum
cost on that?
purchase agreement with
Okay,
Cabot.
all right, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tad. I appreciate the update.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, we can now move on to our consent agenda items, items 1 through 12. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read those items.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to set July 17, 2018 as the date of public hearing on the request to abandon a number of easements and covenants located within the Little Rock Land Company Medical and Commercial Park located at 600 South University Avenue in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, a resolution to set July 2, 2018 as the date of public hearing on the appeal of the Planning Commission's action in denying a conditional use permit to allow a multi-sectional modular home on the R3 Single Family District Zone property located at 2605 Brown Street in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, a resolution to identify expenditures in various wards for capital improvement projects, funding from the proceeds of the 3/8 capital sales and compensating use, and the 2018 capital improvement bonds for street and drainage, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Gene Summers Construction Incorporated in amount not to exceed $459,501.72 for Rush Street improvements from Cantrell Road to Piggy Street, and for the purposes, funding from the 2012 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the 2013 limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution to accept title to property donated to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas by quitclaim deed to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs, and for the purposes, a resolution to transfer title to Shauna Shackelford via quitclaim deed for property sold by the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the purchase of property offered for the sale to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs, and for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a 6th renewal contract with Safety National Casualty Corporation to provide workers' compensation stop-loss coverage for 1 year effective July 1st, 2018, and for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Fleming Electric Incorporated to provide electrical repairs on an as-needed basis, and for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Energy Roofs and Walls, LLC to provide carpentry repairs on an as-needed basis, and for the purposes, a resolution to support a grant application to National League of Cities to conduct a citywide campaign to address hunger, and for the purposes, a resolution to recognize SHI International Corporation as a public procurement unit available to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas for external procurement activity, and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The consent agenda is adopted. We can now move on to the grouped items, items 13 through 20, please. First reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled King Ridge Enterprises Revised Short Form PDC, located at 2501 South Broadway Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned industrial district titled Ace General Contractors, long form PID, located at 11,201 Stagecoach Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled 2712 Kavanaugh Short Form PCD, located at 2712 Kavanaugh Boulevard and 703 Beechwood Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Stagecoach Village, Lot 1, revised short form POD, located at 9222 Stagecoach Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. Ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled 818 West Capitol short form PCD, located at 818 West Capitol Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance authorizing the mayor and city manager to enter into an interlocal agreement for the purpose of establishing and funding the operations of the Pulaski County Regional Crisis Stabilization Unit to declare an emergency and for the purposes. An ordinance to enter into a contract with SHI International Corporation in an amount not to exceed $155,983.98 plus applicable taxes for the purchase of a case management, document management, and time management system for the city attorney's office using iManage, Create, and law-based products, to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid parts of this purchase, to declare an emergency and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise to the LaMarche Place Property Owners Association for the placement of 7 security cameras in the right-of-way at the intersection of LaMarche Boulevard and LaMarche Drive, and for the purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled King Ridge Enterprises, revised short form PDC, located at 2501 South Broadway Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan industrial district titled Ace General Contractors, long form PID, located at 11,201 Stagecoach Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled 2712 Kavanaugh short form PCD, located at 2712 Kavanaugh Boulevard and 703 Beechwood Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Stagecoach Village, Lot 1, revised short form POD, located at 9222 Stagecoach Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled 818 West Capitol short form PCD, located at 818 West Capitol Avenue. An ordinance authorizing the mayor and city manager to enter into an interlocal agreement for the purpose of establishing and funding the operations of the Pulaski County Regional Crisis Stabilization Unit to declare an emergency. An ordinance to enter into a contract with SHI International Corporation in an amount not to exceed $155,983.98 plus applicable taxes for the purchase of a case management, document management, and time management system for the city attorney's office using iManage, Create, and law-based products, to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid parts of this purchase, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to grant a franchise to the LaMarche Place Property Owners Association for the placement of 7 security cameras in the right-of-way of the intersection of LaMarche Boulevard and LaMarche Drive. Second reading.
Reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled King Ridge Enterprises, revised short form PDC, located at 2501 South Broadway Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan industrial district titled Ace General Contractors, long form PID, located at 11,201 Stagecoach Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled 2712 Kavanaugh short form PCD, located at 2712 Kavanaugh Boulevard and 703 Beechwood Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Stagecoach Village, Lot 1, revised short form POD, located at 9222 Stagecoach Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled 818 West Capitol short form PCD, located at 818 West Capitol Avenue. An ordinance authorizing the mayor and city manager to enter into an interlocal agreement for the purpose of establishing and funding the operations of the Pulaski County Regional Crisis Stabilization Unit to declare an emergency. An ordinance to enter into a contract with SHI International Corporation in an amount not to exceed $155,983.98 plus applicable taxes for the purchase of a case management, document management, and time management system for the city attorney's office using iManage, Create, and law-based products, to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid parts of this purchase, to declare an emergency, an ordinance to grant a franchise to the LaMarche Place Property Owners Association for the placement of 7 security cameras in the right-of-way of the intersection of LaMarche Boulevard and LaMarche Drive. Third and final reading.
All right, we've had the three readings. All in favor of the passage of the ordinances indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. On the emergency clause on ordinance number 18, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is passed. And on ordinance number 19, all in favor of the emergency clause indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That emergency clause has also passed. Okay, that concludes our grouped items. We can now move on to our separate items 21, 22, and 23. And Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the first reading on ordinance number 21, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled PB General Holdings, LR, Colonel Glenn, short form PCD, located at 9601 Colonel Glenn Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes first reading.
Move we suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development and establish a planned commercial district titled PB General Holdings, LR Colonel Glenn, short form PCD, located at 9601 Colonel Glenn Road, second reading.
Move we suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development and establish a planned commercial district titled PB General Holdings, LR Colonel Glenn, short form PCD, located at 9601 Colonel Glenn Road, third and final reading.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Yes, if you come forward, we have, I'll let you make a presentation, please, and then I have one card who wishes to speak against this item.
I would actually like to yield my time to whoever's in opposition.
Are you
if we
the
can.
applicant?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why would you want to do that?
But, sorry.
Pardon?
I'm sorry. We're just looking to propose as most know, a Dollar General store. The property currently consists of 2 lots that we're trying to combine into one. It is zoned residential. We are looking to rezone it to commercial to allow for that store. We did have one person in opposition at the planning commission meeting. However, we discussed everything with her. Her main concern was the traffic increase, which we don't expect to happen. This type of stores are typically for bringing in current business that's already traveling that road. It's not to bring in extra business from across town, like, say, the outlet malls over in Otter Creek. One of her others was, being able to get out of her drive. I personally went down to the site and during around 3 o'clock, I guess it was, and didn't have any problems getting out.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, and I'll give you an opportunity to respond again if it's necessary based on the person who wishes to speak against it. Sherry Enoch? Ms. Enoch, if you come forward, please.
Yes, thank you. As you stated, my name is Sherry Enoch. And I have 3 specific reasons why I'm opposed to it. I live in a residential area right around the corner, kind of down the street around the corner. So I travel that stretch of road on Colonel Glenn quite a bit. And I am concerned about an adverse amount of traffic on that street. That's a very narrow stretch of road. And I believe that there will be additional traffic for folk who want to come to this Dollar General store. So I am concerned because there's not a turning lane there. Like I said, it's a very narrow road of traffic. So if you've got anybody going in either direction that wants to turn, that's going to hose up traffic a bit on that road. So I see that happening. Also, there are already several dollar stores along that stretch of Colonel Glenn. There are 3 already. So I really don't see the need why there should be another one. It just seems like it's saturating the area with an additional dollar store. My third concern, as she stated, that's a residential area, and it's a really quiet area along that stretch. So I'm concerned about noise, like I said, traffic, any negative type of activity that would be generated by another Dollar General store. So it just doesn't seem to be a need for that to happen along that area.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Enoch. Excuse me, Ms. Enoch, yes. Would you like to respond to any of those issues, please?
Yes, sir. The property adjacent to us on both sides is currently zone commercial. There's a fitness center that's kind of cat-a-corner from us that's commercial. There's a church across the street. So there are commercial areas. The land use map shows that that area is mixed use, which is residential, commercial, and I believe office. So the area kind of serves for that. As far as the multiple Dollar Generals, those stores are made to serve the neighborhood, the existing neighborhood around it, not bring in, if there's that many, it shouldn't bring in any more traffic than what's already there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Director Wyrick, you're recognized,
I have a
please.
question for her, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Enoch is in a neighborhood association, and I presented this item to them on Saturday. And there were two things that came from the neighborhood. One of them was the fact that the Dollar Generals are selling alcohol, and the fact that it seems to be a target for crime. Can you answer both of those questions?
I can't answer anything on the crime issue. As far as alcohol, I'm not sure. I think they're looking into it, but if they do it, it'll be by whatever the regulations allow.
So you do plan to sell alcohol there?
I have no word permanently whether they are or not.
Okay. I drove by there Saturday looking at the location, and I didn't see a sign up for this proposed development. Maybe there was one there and I just missed it because traffic's going up and down the road,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I'm driving, trying to figure out where it is. But it seemed like there were a number of buildings along that area. And are they a part of this application, and will you be tearing them down?
No, ma'am. There's actually multiple properties along that area that are for sale. Right now, it's just the gated area. There's an old building right up front that they'll be tearing down, and I think there's another building toward the back.
Okay, is it the gated area
Yes,
that you're
ma'am.
going in? Okay,
Yes,
because I did see that. It was just difficult for me to pick out
Okay.
exactly where you are. Okay, and so the crime issue seems to be that there's not that many people that are working in Dollar Generals. There may be one person at the cash register and no one else working there. So it seems to be a place where people want to come in and rob them. Are you going to have multiple people at this location?
That part I cannot honestly answer to. 2 to 3 people.
2 to 3 people there.
Yes,
And what are your hours going to be?
Let's see. I believe typically it's 7 to 10 or 8 to 10. I can't remember right off.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let the board know that even though this says Ward 7, it's right across from Ward 6. And I did hear from the John Barrow Neighborhood Association, and they are opposed to this. We have several of these stores. One on Barrow, which we were able to keep from selling alcohol due to the saturation in the area around it. So they do not sell alcohol, but they had planned to. So that would be something that they would be seeking to do. We have a Family Dollar right down the street, another Dollar General, and right down, further on down around the corner from J.A. Fair, there is another Dollar General. I just find this expansion just really weird that you would lump this many stores of a similarity that close together. As BJ said, it's very difficult traveling through that area.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you're trying to turn in, you are going to hold up traffic. There are no plans to widen that. That is a state highway. Okay, there are no plans to widen that, and I'm not supportive of this because I travel that area all the time, and I know what the traffic will be, people turning into that store, people trying to get out of that store. It will be a nightmare.
Yes, ma'am.
She didn't see a sign because you can't see anything. You're trying to navigate that curve going through there. So I just find the placement of this very, very concerning, and the fact that the expansion plan for these stores are just all over the place. And let me be clear, I love Dollar General, shop at them every day,
Yes, ma'am.
okay? I love their prices, but enough is enough. I mean, there needs to be some consideration for traffic patterns and for where you're locating and how it's going to impact what's going on around it. So I'm not supportive of this application. Thank you.
Director Wire, do you have another comment? Go right ahead, please.
Oh, okay, it's working now. We had a state representative, Frederick Love, that was at the meeting on Saturday, and he said he was definitely opposed. Am I right, Sherry? He was opposed to it, and his two reasons were the crime and the amount of alcohol that's saturating the community.
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you very much. Director Wright?
There is a church, I guess you would call the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses a church. It's right across the street from this.
Yes, ma'am.
I failed to mention that so
Well,
that you all know.
It's
that
kind of cat a corner, but yes,
It's
ma'am.
across the street. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, the staff is recommending approval, is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor. I mean, I think there's some issues that have been raised today that I think are substantive, though.
Okay, we can move on to Director Richardson, yes. You're recognized.
Yes, Mr. Moore, does those issues change staff's recommendation?
And I don't know, might need the city attorney's help on the saturation issue. I mean, there are a significant number, and that's something that can be considered. And then the traffic concerns, give me some.
Well, help me, Tom, distinguish this from the disproportionate number of liquor stores in certain parts of our community and/or convenience stores. If that's an issue from a legal standpoint, help me differentiate that. Because there seems to be certain parts of our community where we have a disproportionate number of liquor stores within close proximity of each other, as well as convenience stores that sell alcohol within close proximity in each other. So help me understand if that changes the staff's recommendation, and if it does, legally, what's the rationale? If I think that's why Bruce called on you to respond.
I have no comment about a legal standpoint because y'all are not dealing with that. You're dealing with a zoning question. And basically, you're dealing with the commercial use of a property in a particular area. Now, the individual indicated to you, I have no reason to doubt her. I have no reason not to doubt her. I don't know. But that, she doesn't know if they're going to try to sell alcoholic beverages in this store, but she did note that if that is the intention, they'll go through the process with the ABC, and Director Wright has pointed out that there have been occasions when ABC has denied permits because of the saturation issue. That's the correct forum to raise that issue, is in terms of, the saturation of it in terms of whether it should be allowed in that area. The use is really before you as a commercial use. And a commercial use, it's going to be subject to certain conditions. In terms of the traffic, I think the question you've got to ask is not what will this applicant bring in terms of traffic, but what will any applicant bring in terms of traffic? And are we going to not allow somebody to use property the way they wish to in Arkansas because we're worried that traffic might occur? If that's to become the board's guideline, you've got cases all around the city where you've had to do that, and that's what the Planning Commission looks at.
Sure. So it passed at the Planning Commission 8-0, 3 absent. Is that correct? And Bruce, your point, you may not have heard Tom's answer fully because you were talking to John. Back to my original question, does that change staff's recommendations. I know.
But, and I'd like to ask Mr. Honeywell to come forward and just
Okay.
give an update, because he learned something just recently about that section of Colonel Glenn. That I want to be sure that's on the record.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, John.
About a week and a half ago, I met with the highway department. This is a state highway, that section of Colonel Glenn. And they are initiating a study of that section from the 430 interchange back to the split with Stagecoach. Both Stagecoach and Colonel Glenn are state highways. So they're looking at that section of Colonel Glenn to see if there's improvements that they're going to do in the future. It's the very beginning, very start of them looking at a planning study of that corridor. But I did want y'all to be aware that they are looking at that for potential improvements in the future.
And so if
Mayor,
it is improved, will that impact the, what impact would that have?
I mean, you're talking about widening the road, potentially changing drainage. Like I said, they're just starting to look at it, but it would be an improvement to the road itself. It's a 2-lane with some shoulders and deep ditches on the sides of it for a lot of that stretch through there.
So are we not in a position to factor that into our recommendation of approval or disapproval?
Well, at this point, it's just them starting to look at a planning phase.
Sure.
There's no guarantee that they would ever do a project there. I just wanted y'all to be aware that they are looking at that for a potential project in the future and looking at a plan of what that might entail.
Thank you, John.
Okay, Director Wyrick.
Could I have a conversation with Jamie Collins? It'll be public. Mr. Collins, this is a short form planned commercial development. So what does that mean?
Well, on the short form is just the size of the application, but it's a planned commercial development, and essentially it's not a straight zoning. It's a commercial development that can have set criteria established to it above and beyond standard zoning for commercial. So this is a commercial zoning, but as requested, it could be limited. You can limit hours, you could limit, several things in a planned commercial development, or they could request stuff that are variances from our code in a commercial development.
Is it site specific or is it?
Yes.
Okay. So this planned commercial development is for Dollar General. And in the event that Dollar General did not want to build here or Dollar General folded, what happens to the planned commercial development?
We've had that question come before the board before, and in regards to like a restaurant chain that comes in. When a planned commercial development is approved, it is site-specific to the site layout. It would have to substantially comply with the site plan and the use as presented previously for the approval. So that could be the footprint of the building, that could be the parking, that could be the landscaping, that could be what they're selling in the building or the retail use. So it has to be substantially compliant with what was approved.
Okay. And the liquor stores that Ken was talking about, those were probably just plain C3 zoning where you didn't have a site-specific type development. There could be some PCDs, but.
Yeah, there could be some PCDs, but in our commercial zoning, that it is an allowed use.
Okay.
And we do not set the distances are set by the ABC.
Okay. But the big thing I wanted to get out of this is site-specific
Yes.
Zoning for Dollar General.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Director Hancock, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Collins, if this store did not make it, could it then become a liquor store?
Not without an amendment to the ordinance.
No, they would have to come through and it would be a brand-new PCD.
Okay.
Or a different type of zoning. I mean, essentially, it's not substantially compliant.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it looks like that is, completes the questions that we have. Let me go ahead and call. Tee up. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor of the passage of the ordinance indicate by saying aye. All opposed, say nay. With Director Richardson recorded as present, the ordinance has failed. Thank you very much.
Director Richardson, do you wish to change your vote?
Okay, we can now move on to the next item, which is item 22. And let me ask the clerk for the first reading of the ordinance, please.
An ordinance to grant a franchise agreement to Duke Energy for Smart Media LLC for the placement of a city post smart kiosk with digital wayfinding on West Markham Street near the intersection of South Main Street to declare an emergency and for other purposes. First reason.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to grant a franchise agreement to Duke Energy for Smart Media LLC for the placement of a city post smart kiosk with digital wayfinding on West Markham Street near the intersection of South Main Street to declare an emergency. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the
Right.
rules and place this item on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to grant a franchise agreement to Duke Energy for Smart Media LLC for the placement of a city post smart kiosk with digital wayfinding on West Markham Street near the intersection of South Main Street to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
Very good. I believe we have the applicant here is Mr. Bento. If you'd come forward, please. I believe you've got a presentation on the smart kiosks. If you would.
Good evening. My name is Mike Mainthow from Smart City Media. And what I'd like to do, number one, I'm excited to bring our City Post digital information network to Little Rock. We've been working on this for quite a while with the city, and it's an exciting network, and it is your network. It is all about.
Is there a way to get the blue video input?
It's up there.
Oh, okay. It's just on ours.
It'll go
Oh, there it goes. Okay, very good. Go ahead.
You got it?
Go ahead.
What I'd like to do is take you through a few slides of what this network is about. But it is an extremely visual medium. So what I'd like to do in the second half of this discussion is show you an actual demonstration of what the content on the screens will be about and how the network functions. And it's truly an interactive live demo of fully Little Rock information. And again, I was saying this is your network. It's all about publishing the best of the best information that Little Rock has to offer. We are the publishers. My partner used to run the Today Show, so he's got a little bit of background in that space. But it is really about, we talk about it as a smart community bulletin board. It's a Little Rock community bulletin board where we're posting messages about the city. It could be everything from restaurants, wayfinding, safety and security, on, and I'll take you through all that in a moment. That's a visual of the kiosk. That screen is fully interactive, and it is a digital channel, and you operate it just like you do your mobile phone. We have safety and security functions. We have a 911 touch button that will be directed. We're working with the Little Rock Police Department on the functionality. Every kiosk that is on the street is a Wi-Fi hotspot. We put environmental sensors on the screen, and I'll show you what those look like. We have custom apps, and what that means is we work with the city. We partner with the mayor's office and decide what type of information is important for Little Rock. Is it just restaurants, it's hotels, but it's also city services, small business directed. Small business is core to what we do. We allow small businesses to get on the network. We curate everything that goes out, but they can publish information in virtually real time It could be a deal, it could be a special on dinner, whatever it is, as people are walking by. The information is hyperlocal, which means where you're standing, the information is relevant. The restaurants that come up first, where you're standing, are the restaurants in the area you're standing. So thus it's what we call a smart network. We talk about data collection. We know what people touch, we know where they touch, but we do not say that that information is shared with the city. We do not sell it. We do not save emails, phone numbers, etc. We just share everything that people touch on the screen with the city. Hopefully it's information that's helpful and it can help decisions as the city moves forward with the program. This is just a diagram of the kiosk. These are extremely durable as they sit outside 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. At nighttime, there are sensors in the kiosk that the light dims down, so it's not it doesn't bother anyone late at night. And it's highly ruggedized. It can take a beating. We've launched in Kansas City 2 years ago. We haven't had a problem with the kiosk with vandalism. We've had a few posters on the screen or stickies that we clean off in a moment because we have a maintenance crew out there on a regular basis. You can see we brand the kiosk. It's a Little Rock branded kiosk. As the content on the channel is about Little Rock, the graphics on the kiosk are Little Rock. We can actually personalize to the community what this kiosk looks like here at East Markham. It could have a different look in a different neighborhood if the city chooses as such. And you'll see this in the demonstration, we talk about connecting communities, making communities smarter, safer, and better connected. That blue light at the top is right here. That's actually an LED light. So it serves as, number one, you know it's an information hub, but you also know it's a safety place, a place where you can actually go and touch 911, which is right here on the side. That's the 911 button. And that actually, this light will turn red if the 911 button is being used or being accessed. So this is the kiosk, but the feature really is what's happening on this screen. And it's for everyone. It's for not only, people could come to me and say, is this network only for tourists? Well, no, because if it has transit information or if it has specials that you don't know about, it's for everyone. And we have evidence of that in the cities that we've launched. So it's for your citizens, it's for your tourists, and it's for your businesses alike. We've done a lot of work in the ADA community, so everything we do has been ADA tested. From sight impaired, hearing impaired, and wheelchair accessibility. We talk about flexible networks, and what I mean by that is the apps that I'll show you in a moment. We customize those to the city, and we also customize the graphics on the kiosk. So we are flexible. If there's an app that's not used and it's a waste of space, we can trade that out and find out what else are people interested in. We can have surveys on the network. If in times of trouble, if the mayor needs to take over and put out an announcement, he has the ability to take over the network and push out a message that can be on one side of town. If it's an evacuate north, and if it's on the evacuate south on a different kiosk. So it can be customized down to the screen. Talked about. So this talks a little bit about our small business program, but we really put a lot of emphasis on this. And by the way, once we launch the kiosks, we also develop a companion mobile app because we know everyone has an app in their hand or in their pocket, and they can take the network with them and use it wherever and whenever they so choose. So it really is a mirror of what's on the kiosk screen. The small business owners can get on the network at no cost. We don't guarantee how long they're on the network, but every business operator can get on this network, and we encourage that. I will come back to the city and conduct seminars for small businesses on how to get on the network. We'll have tutorials, and it's a very simple process. And it's been successful in other cities that we've been in to date. So, we're proud to bring this here, and let me take you through any questions before I go to the demo.
Go ahead.
So what I'm going to show you, let me just get this screen. So think of this on a 55-inch screen, and we're publishing every day to the network. So it's constantly, it's new broadcast because it has to be interesting as you walk by. You don't want to see the same information on the screen every day. You're just going to walk by it. Hopefully you're going to see something that does catch your eye. These are 10-second messages, and it's anything from arts and culture, restaurants, whatever. It could be a video. The mayor could put a video out. There's sound, if whatever is on the screen has sound, or it's static. So again, this is just a smattering of a variety of things that are happening around the city. Down here, I talked about sensors. This is giving you temperature, UV sun index, and air quality. And again, these sensors they're pretty standard, but this is a decision that we make with the city, what's important for you to put on the screen here. So let me give you, again, I said these are 10-second digital messages, and now let's find out a little bit more about what's going on in Little Rock. So it starts with Little Rock Now, and we call the brand City Post because it's simply posting messages about the city. I said it was fully interactive. Think about this as your finger on the screen, scrolling up and down what's interesting, what can I find out, what's going on in the city. The apps that we have just to start, and again, this is day one, so what day one and month 6 are like could be very different. We talk about, so this is Must See Little Rock. We have events, arts and culture, restaurants, nightlife. If there is a bike share program in the city, we put bike share. We have that in Kansas City and Louisville. You can actually take a selfie, which I'll show what that looks like at the end, which we know in other cities people are having a ball with this stuff, and they can download it to their mobile phone in 2 seconds time. Access Little Rock is accessibility. What places have accessibility for wheelchair access, et cetera. Family fun, hotels, social services. So that's just a run through. Let me give you an idea of how each one of these posts work. If you go to, let's find just simply restaurants. And again, these restaurants, the top grouping would be the restaurants that are closest to where you're standing. So if I happen to go on one of the restaurants, I'm going to get, this is their visual. And if I want to make a call from the street, I can do that and I can make a reservation. And if I want to share the information, if it's something that's of real interest to a friend or a family member, I can share this and send them an email. If I want to save the information to my phone, I put my number in, and again, we're not saving the numbers. We're just allowing that process. And then you get reviews. Now, if I want directions on how to get from the kiosk, point A, to that restaurant, sometimes it's not easy to remember the direction when you leave the kiosk, so you can send it to your phone. So that functionality is on every one of these posts. This is scrollable. This is scrollable. Then when you come down here, you have wayfinding. And these, what's around the area. So this is a sculpture garden. It gives me all that information again, on and on. And then if I want to do restaurants, nightlife, I just push each app that I'm interested in to find out what's around me. There's transit, which functions just like you do on your phone. You have point A to point B, and it'll give you directions in a moment's notice, whether it's walking, riding a bike, a trolley, or what have you. And again, you can send that direction to your phone. Voice search is coming. It'll be a couple months, but you could walk up and say, "Tell me what restaurants are in the area," and it'll give you a listing. This is one that people find interesting. This is our multilingual. which for people that are coming to Little Rock from a foreign country and need information in their language, again, we sit down with the city and say, what are the 9 languages or 8 languages? We can do up to 100+ languages. What are the ones that are important for Little Rock? And just to give a quick demonstration, so we'll pick Spanish, and everything has been instantly translated. This is all in Spanish, and then even down here, this has all been translated. So very helpful for, obviously, people coming from another country. Disability, we have, if you can see up here the picture, and then the picture now drops down. So people in a wheelchair can access the information that's up top a lot easier, or they can scroll just like we saw before. So that's 2 different ways of access for wheelchair bound individuals. We are a content channel, and it's supported by ad revenue, but it is a content channel, and we share that revenue with the city. And then the city gets to choose however they want to use those funds, but we have a guaranteed percentage. Whatever revenue comes in to the network, we share with the city. We fund the entire 100% of the network and share in the revenue. So that's a very quick overview of what we're doing, why we're doing it. Again, think of it as your network.
Mr. Maintho, if you would, you mentioned the safety and security issues, and you mentioned 911. I believe there's also cameras
Yes.
on this as well, so if the police are interested in finding out about a particular situation that happened, purse snatching, burglary, what have you, are there cameras that can be accessed?
Yes. So we have up to 7 cameras inside the unit. I mentioned selfies. That's one on one side. And by the way, there is a screen on both sides of the kiosk, so coming and going. But there are 7 cameras, so we can capture close to 360 degrees. So we know that the Little Rock Police Department is very interested in this feature, and we have a bunch of work to do with them, but we will get there.
You pointed out, I think it said U.S. Army on one of these. Would you mention to the board the opportunity for recruitment of employers or employees by various employers in the city if they wish to do that?
Yeah, so in Kansas City, the U.S. Army has been an advertiser on an ongoing basis because of the recruiting capability. So they can sign up literally. They can fill out information, or they can download it to their phone from the kiosk. So it's a great venue for the Army, and we're actually expanding to the university in Kansas City, and the Army's excited about that because of your age demographics. In Little Rock, in Louisville, which we launched in April, an example, we're working with UPS, who's got an interesting issue that they need to hire 100 people a week. So we have the capability of that recruitment to educate people, number one, that you can sign up, and number two, that this hub is accessible, and it's a great venue for the UPS and for the public.
We've got some questions by some of the board members or comments. Director Wright, you're first, please.
Sure. Once your franchise agreement is, if approved, how do I get one?
How do you get a kiosk?
Uh-huh.
Where are you?
I'm in West Central Little Rock.
So
out by Baptist Hospital.
So we would come out and talk to you about it and see.
Can we make an appointment?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm coming back this weekend.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Moore, I'll defer to you to get me contact information. I'd just like to get some information on that now.
Love to help you.
Next question. When we say franchise agreement, typically that means revenue for the city. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah. So, again, we have a revenue agreement that we will give a percent of all the revenue we take in comes back to the city.
Okay.
And there's no cost to the city.
So there is money to be made.
There's money to be made.
Good. Okay. I think I've seen these in other cities. Have I?
Not like this.
Not like this.
Not like, we actually started a pilot in New York City,
Uh-huh.
back with Mayor Bloomberg. And then we, I like to use the story. Not many people call it success when you go from New York City to Kansas City, but it was.
Well, that is a stretch.
And that's how we met the mayor.
Uh-huh.
We met the mayor of Louisville, Memphis, Dallas, and all have signed on. So,
Okay.
because seeing is, I guess, believing here.
Okay.
Because our approach is, more than any other kiosk I've seen, is fully community embedded. It is your network, and that, so from the graphic on the kiosk to the information on the screen, there's nothing national. It's all about Little Rock.
Seems like it would be a great asset for our downtown. I can see some uses as well. Maybe not as elaborate, but yeah. What's your name again?
Mike. I'll give you
What's
a card.
last name?
Mike Mainthau. Mainthau. I'll give you a card.
But I still don't know what that
You
is.
haven't heard of another.
Mainthau.
Another piece that we do is when we talk about involving the community, we'll work with the tech community. We'll work with Gretchen's group, the Convention Visitors and Convention Bureau. We're working, and I will tell you, in Kansas City, there's someone sits on the board that loves arts and culture. She now is the one publishing all the arts and culture. It's simple. We give a template, and they publish. It's got to be short. We don't want people. No one's going to read, paragraphs.
Well,
so it's short, sweet, but the arts and culture is run by the city.
Well, I have a partnership with my middle school, and they have a EAST program, and they are going to be developing an app for our radio station, and I would love for them.
We could look at that, and
Yeah.
that could be an app on
Yeah,
there.
I would love for them to have a opportunity to see this. I think they'd be very, very excited.
And it's interesting too, because I'll use Kansas City as an example because they have pro sports, but so sports is an app.
Yeah.
And everyone expects to see the Chiefs and the Royals, and they do.
Well,
But they also see the kids and the high schools.
Yes.
So that's what's important, and that's when it gets the parents involved. So, or you'll see the Chiefs in summertime, not during the season. What are they doing in the community? So that's important to bring to the screens.
Okay.
So
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Good.
Thank you.
I will
Direct-
give you a card.
Director Peck, you're recognized, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We've done a little bit of research and seen what you have done in Kansas City and Louisville, and see that there's a tremendous amount of potential, not just for citizens, but visitors too. How did you determine where these kiosks will go? I know where the first one is.
Sure.
About how
Good
many
question.
are you planning at this point in time, and where will they go?
I mean, we're talking about initially 15, and they're all in the downtown area. We've had discussions about broadening them, but we haven't gotten that far. So initially 15, and walk before we run, and determine what does that portfolio look like. So
How many do you have in Louisville, for instance?
in Louisville, so we're starting with 25. We have 9 up because we just started a month ago, and they're, every city has its issues. There's a lot of construction. They're building a new convention center, et cetera. So we will have 25 up by September. They're talking, they want 100, and it's like, okay. Again, walk before we run. So we have to make sure that the city can support 100.
So Kansas City started with about 25, and now
So, yeah.
in the second year now they want another 100. So
Now, Kansas City is interesting because we're expanding to the airport, we're expanding to the university, and to the bus transit line. So it's got multiple verticals. So, and I know we've talked about different locations. So we're excited about coming here.
And so I'm assuming that the majority of the content will come from the littlerock.gov and the Convention and Visitor Bureau website?
Yeah, I mean, that's
initially?
where they're great resources, but we'll, from restaurants, I mean, we'll scrape all kinds of social media and get like the best content, because it's got to be interesting. It just can't be, it can't sit flat. For example, 4th of July, and we can't do it here, but 4th of July in Kansas City, we're going to have a, huge display and a giveaway. So there's a lot of things, because it's interactive, that you can have fun and informative network for the public. So,
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have Couple of questions. You mentioned early on that small businesses in the neighborhood, in the River Market, would be able to get on this at no cost, but I believe you said you didn't know how long they would stay on there. Was that correct?
Yeah, so, for example, the restaurants could appear in the loop, and they would also, well, let's go back to whether it's let's just say it's a restaurant, they'll appear when they first sign on, they'll have top position. As the next people publish, they'll go to the second position, but they'll always come back. So I can't guarantee, because if you have 50 restaurants publishing, you can't always be in the top slot. You've got to go down to the next. But we will guarantee placement, and for no cost. If they want a guaranteed placement and they want a guaranteed amount of time, then they can pay. But what we also do for the small business group is we always, if there is a price, we want to keep that down to an absolute minimum, because we know how hard it is for small businesses to pay the bill. So we look to bring on a larger corporate sponsor locally. For example, Sprint, they provided Wi-Fi to the network in Kansas City. So they supported small business Kansas City, and it was a big hit. So so we look to make it as easy as possible and make it accessible to everyone.
Thank you. And my second question, and I can see some real positives about this, and I can also see some questions, because we've had some spirited discussions in the past about electronic billboards, and I understand this is not exactly the same thing, but
it comes up all the time.
The proliferation of billboards, and you said after 15, or you were originally going for 15, so say you wanted to go into a couple of other neighborhoods, what kind of, do you have to come back to the board to get, do we?
That's correct.
Not for him, maybe for Tom.
I can take a shot at this first. First of all, I have been working with this organization for almost 24 months because of the what I consider to be smart city applications that are involved, and really making sure Little Rock is at the forefront in terms of these activities. So the initial discussion was to put it downtown. There are 15 sites that have been identified, and we have to have an ordinance for the franchise. Rather than come back 15 times, this is the first one. Obviously wanted to have the board see the demonstration, and then the other 14 locations will be vetted out between Entergy and the people who do the installing on that with smart media, and so those will be identified, and we'll probably come back with another ordinance that identifies those 14 locations. And then again, if there are other locations in the city, then as those are identified and looked at as viable, then we come back with another ordinance to approve additional franchises. That's how it works. And this was taken to, and there's, I don't want to, you have other questions? I was going to follow up on one other issue for you.
Let me go ahead and ask again for a little bit more clarification about the difference between this and an electronic billboard.
Yeah, sure. So typically an electronic billboard is an ad network. That's what it's been. And we've made a conscious decision that we are a content channel first. 65% of that digital loop is content. And that's what drives the network. So we're not an ad channel by any means, and that's what typically the billboards have been. They're also mega size typically. We're 55 inches is our that's our sweet spot. That's the screen. But again, it's think of it. We just had this conversation with the mayor of Memphis, and because he came in saying, I don't like billboards, and he walked away saying, when are we going to implement these? Because when he understood the value certainly from safety and security, because every city needs that, but the value of what you can provide and how you embed the entire community in this, that the value, the services that you're giving to the city, certainly, I don't want to say outweighs, because I don't look at this as a billboard. Anyway.
Okay.
On a related question to what Vice Mayor Webb asked about, I know that there was a question raised in our River Market area where we have a design review committee, and actually this was presented to them, I believe, a week ago, and they endorsed it and supported it. But the question that was raised was a good question, and it is, what if, and it had to do with competition. It had to do with, well, we want to support the restaurants, or we want to support the businesses in the River Market. We don't particularly want to necessarily have that competition from other places, other parts of the city. So if the River Market area wants to only have their particular businesses identified there, you will certainly agree and accommodate to that. Is that correct?
Sure. I mean, it's obviously doable because of the digital nature of this. So if it's just exclusively to the River Market area, then that's what we'll do.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to raise that as a related issue. Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Well, Kathy asked one of my questions in regards to the small business application part of it. But, in Ward 7, Southwest Little Rock, we've got a destination location going on with the Bass Pro and the Gateway Town Center and Movie Tavern, and we have our own Hooters now. So I would see this as an application maybe in that location. And the other thing is, I was at the airport this morning, and they're talking about all the neat expansions that they're going to be doing in the front of the building and that sort of thing. So I think the airport would also be a good location for this. So put these on your list, Mr. Moore, for us to talk about. Thank you.
Director Richardson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, and I think that we all have a conceptual framework of what it is we want to accomplish with this. And I do know that you said, I think I remember you said this will generate revenue for the city. And this may be a question that you may or may not be able to answer. Will this create any jobs for local residents in our city?
Any jobs?
Local jobs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can.
So can you tell me how many jobs we expect to create for local residents with this?
I don't have a number in mind, but for example,
Guesstimation.
so maintenance.
Sure.
So a maintenance crew. So if we have 15 locations, I mean, a half a dozen, I don't know. But maintenance is one.
Sales.
Sales
for sure.
But that would be based on the number that we approve that we have here. So maintenance, sales, just a guess on just one location. That may not be a fair question for you to answer.
I mean, typically we go beyond one, but I mean, if 15, I mean, you're talking maybe, up to 10 people.
Up to 10. And salary range, is it just strictly minimum wage, or is there a range we can guess on? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I mean, I think that you said it generates revenue for the city, but we're always talking about
Jobs.
Yeah. The local economy, tax base, tax revenues.
Well, I will say, different than, I'll come back to your question,
Sure.
but when you talk about the local economy,
Sure.
and when you talk about the local pizza shop or the local restaurant or
Sure.
the clothing store being able to push out a message, if it's the restaurant, we have a special going on from 12 to 1:30 this afternoon. And it's pushed out to 5 kiosks as opposed to all 15, wherever that business owner wants to push that message out. He can generate feet on the street into his storefront. That's obviously a benefit to each of the businesses. So there is economic benefit, I know that. As far as, the amount of people, I mean, number one, it does depend on how many you put out. So it's a handful of people. But again, it's about economic development for the city.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manto. If you'll have a seat, we have one card from a citizen who wishes to speak against this matter, and let me call on Joe Melton, please, and then I'll give you a chance to respond if there's any need for such.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Joe Melton. I'm really here more about what I do support and some questions that I have. Some were answered tonight, and I appreciate that. I realize that this is the first of 15 that you're proposing to do. And then I did hear you speak at the DRC meeting. So I learned a bit more, and then I did some research too. And in my research, well, first, what applies to Little Rock that is a concern to me is this is an off-premise sign. And so that has not occurred, at least in the River Market District up to now, and it was part of the overlay district where that was a restriction that we had so that we could protect the small businesses down there. And I'm all about small businesses. We have 3 tenants in our building, and so when I learned about this, I saw many positive things too. The wayfinding, that's wonderful, and many of the things that are mentioned here. But for me, the cost of it to small businesses was a thing that really got my attention. Now, I hear tonight that this would be free, which I just can't imagine. And so my question is, really, how long is that? It's almost too good to be true, but is that true? And what I had wondered was if someone that owns a small business and has a small budget for advertising couldn't or chose not to advertise, will their business roll off of this? And I'm sure that can be answered. And will they have at their doorstep a competitor advertising for something across town? So the off-premise is something that has to be overruled, is my understanding, by this ordinance. That and the freestanding and there was one other thing, the illumination, I know, at least in the River Market area. And on my understanding, I've seen where 2 are to go down there on busy corners. And again, I see many of the positives, but the cost of the ads, ultimately, will there be a cost to the small businesses is my question. And then also the content. Who determines what the content is going to be? I don't know if that is the company that owns it. I don't know if it's someone on the local level. I'm sure you can answer that for me, but those are some of the questions I have. And once again, it's the small businesses. It's what I support. I'm not really here to say what I don't support, but I do hope that you can answer those questions for me, please.
Thank you, Ms. Melton. Mr. Manto, if you'd come back, please.
Yeah, let me emphasize on the small business front. We are here to. Our network will not change its direction in terms of supporting small business. You can get on the network for free today, and you're going to be able to get on the network free in a year. So there are no gimmicks. It doesn't mean if you wanted to have presence on the digital loop for 2 hours every day and you wanted a permanent position on the card, that would cost. But if you want presence on the network, whether it's your business or your 3 businesses, we will grant you send us an email and we'll put your business up and when requests come through to put messaging up, they're up within 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. So it's immediate response. We're not here to turn anyone down. So we're an inclusive network and want to support the businesses. So in terms of illumination, I heard, again, at nighttime there are sensors, so the lights will go down. Certainly when no people are around, we don't want a bright light bothering. So, we're aware of that. Was there another?
And there was one issue on content.
And content. Okay. We have a platform, and we work with the city to determine what are the important apps and what information needs to get out. We typically publish, unless the city wants. We're trying not to put any work onto the city. We do. I mean, we're media and content experts. As I said, my partner came from the Today Show. We all have media and backgrounds, and so we do the publishing. And if there's information that you want as a city on the network, you just let us know. And, I mean, just an example, I hate to keep going back to Kansas City, but it was the network of 2 years ago. There was a tornado watch, and we received a call saying, you know, this is happening. So the information was broadcast on the network within 2 minutes. So we're responsive to any calls from the city or needs. So we'll publish, but if you guys, as I said, arts and culture, and you know, in the city, they want to publish it. In Louisville, we have a partner. It's called Louisville Public Media. They're part of the National Public Radio arm, and they know events better than I do in Louisville. So they publish all the events. So we're totally open to the experts if they want to do it. We open that up and we embrace it.
Director Compiers?
Two questions. One, if we grant this franchise for 15 kiosks, what happens if we don't think it works out? Is there a reversal clause? Is there a clause on how we can revoke your franchise?
Director Compiers, you're not granting 15. This is for a specific location. The memorandum of understanding allowed up to 50. They've indicated they want to come with 15, but if they develop each new site, they're going to have to come back with an ordinance that will then be attached as an exhibit.
That's fine, but let's say the first one goes in, and it's in for a trial period of 90 days, whatever.
They've got a right to 10 years.
What's that?
They've got a right to 10 years under the agreement.
But what happens if we don't think this is what I'm getting to. What happens? Is there a way that we can void the franchise? And if we do void it, is there a financial penalty to us?
There's nothing that deals with the financial penalty. The only voided provision I remember is if we end up having to move one because of a street widening and they refuse to move it.
Well, so I mean, we've come up with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you have construction, we remove it.
Right.
We try to find a place of equal pedestrian traffic. So.
But going back to my question, what happens if this board comes back and says, we don't think this is a good idea? For Kansas City was great, Louisville was great, but we don't think it's great. Is there a way of saying we're going to take away the franchise, or we're going to reverse this?
In a general sense, because the franchise is the propriety to use the right-of-way, you may conceivably say at 2nd and Main, and I don't know where you're going to put these things, but at 2nd and Main, we need you to move this. You might be able to do that, but the agreement's already been signed by the mayor that has allowed them, once they put in the kiosk, to keep it there for a period of 10 years. Now, as I understand it, well, I'm not going to, there's a mobility to these, but it's not like you can just pick them up and move them.
Correct.
Well, if they're not, if the city wants to, if the city, after some period of time, within that period of time, decides that it's not working, I would assume you can go back and negotiate some amendment to the franchise agreement or to the MOU. It's a memorandum of understanding. It's not a, I mean, the legally binding aspect of it is the franchise agreement, not necessarily a memorandum of understanding. Okay.
Well,
does that answer your question?
Unfortunately, yes. The second question is, what happens if someone puts an advertisement on there, pays for it, that is judged in some way not to be what we want to be portrayed in the city? How do you police what you're accepting?
We typically use early morning TV guidelines. And if we're near a church or if we're near a school, there are guidelines there. So we have all the guidelines for what's permitted in the contract. So we can review that.
I'm not sure I understand.
So we have guidelines for what we will not put on the screen. whether it's obscenities, whether it's political ads, whether it's pornography, on and on, a list of firearms. We do not allow a whole list of categories onto the network. Whether it's a local establishment that's putting a message on, we see it first. Our responsibility is to the city. So we know we've agreed on what those guidelines are, and therefore we will not put any language or visuals, what have you, on the network.
Tom, can we be legally approached by allowing this franchise? Can we be forced to allow some other sort of advertising beyond what their rules are?
I don't think so, Director Eck. I'm Director Compuris.
We're both old, I know, but I'm the one with the beard.
That's right. In the first place, when you start getting into content on something that's in the public, you start raising First Amendment questions, which is a whole can of worms we do not want to get into. In the first place, when you get into a question of content, you start raising First Amendment questions that you really do not want to get into. This is a form of commercial speech, so there are already some limitations as to what can be done or not done. But to use Director Warwick's example a minute ago, if we get a Hooters in downtown Little Rock and we get a group of people that come in and say, we don't want to have an advertisement for the special at Hooters at noon, then we can tell them that we don't want that, but we really can't do anything about it. Okay. However, in this instance, the kind of unique nature of this franchise is these guys are really relying around the country by how the mayors of the different cities are pleased with their product. And the moment that they get they allow them to put this on and we couldn't do anything about it, is the moment their business model crashes. He can address that better than I can.
I think you addressed it well. Mark, do you feel good about this?
Say what? What did you say? Yes, I do. I think this is cutting edge. I think if the city wants to be progressive, we go forward with this. The staff has made a recommendation of approval on it. I mean, we went to the review committee. We're going to recognize that people don't want, if they don't want any competitors in their area, they're perfectly willing to restrict this. We own the content. So, I mean, I think if we don't want, I guess, a company that's legitimately been licensed by the city and is legal from a zoning standpoint wants to get their 10 seconds on the loop, they probably can get that. But I would assume that if people don't want to have more advertising about that particular business than possible, then they would recognize what the city's desire is and restrict that. So I think it's a really a big step forward, and I personally think it's something that'll be tremendously helpful to our citizens. I think it'll help our police solve a bunch of crimes, a lot of the problems we've got initially downtown. We don't have enough police officers to be on Main Street or in the River Market. We've talked about all those problems. So I personally am very supportive of this. Director Hines, you're next, please.
Yeah. And Director Compuris, I was just reading through the ordinance on Section 4. It says further understood that this franchise is not perpetual and may be revoked by the city in the future as appropriate. So we can go franchise by franchise and revoke them if we've got a problem with it or it's not tenable, it looks like. I'm just putting my junior attorney hat on for Tom.
Director Compuris, did you want to go ahead and push your microphone on, please?
My other question to, I guess, Cappy and Gene, representing the A&P Commission. Y'all had a meeting today. What's y'all's feeling about this?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm supportive of it. I've talked to Gretchen about it for a length of time. I think that it would be a great asset from a public safety, for an information perspective. I think I've looked at the Kansas City, the models in Louisville, tremendous success. It is cutting edge. I understand the concerns about small businesses, being a small business owner, and am curious about, is this really free? This is just too good to be true. And I'm interested about how much advertising would cost. I guess I can, as a small business owner, I'll be finding that out. But I'm very supportive of it, especially considering that the bulk of the information, I think, will come from the LRCVB website and littlerock.gov. It's already there. It's just helping us get that out.
And then the Downtown Partnership and other groups that are putting out content. Director Fortson, you're recognized, please.
I would just add to what Director Peck said. We discussed this at the, excuse me, at the Advertising and Promotion Commission meeting today, and there was some discussion about the success, especially in the downtown area and other areas where staff of the A&B had some contact. And I think, well, with any new concept, there may be some need for some tweaking as we go along. I think on balance, it offers a communications opportunity and both a tourism and a downtown safety opportunity that will be positive in its ultimate effect.
Director Webb, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. Just one more question about the competition. I think it was something Ms. Melton raised, and I don't think I quite got the answer. Like when I used to be a small business owner, there was an agreement within the shopping center that there couldn't be another small business that competed against what I did. And I understand that content on a kiosk might be something different. But say I owned a coffee shop in the River Market and the kiosks were right outside my coffee shop. Is it impinging on free speech to say that you wouldn't take a competitor ad, just like the shopping center could say they would not have another coffee shop?
In the same area, both in River Market?
No.
Oh, so a coffee shop?
A mile away.
Yeah, I mean, we would talk to you and understand what your needs are, and if you need to be exclusive to River Market business, we'll make it exclusive to River Market business.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Okay, I made a cute comment about Hooters, but we do have some other restaurants in the area. We have Saltgrass and Tzatziki's, and we have Movie Tavern, and we get a what? Dave's Burgers, right. We do get buses that come into Bass Pro, and then they sort of invade the shopping center and hit the other restaurants. And so that's the reason why I thought this would be good for that location. But I have a question. Some of the questions that have come up have made me think about it. So we're going to vote on a franchise agreement for one. Okay, and so who develops the content for that one kiosk that we're talking about?
We did. You saw the start.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Will it evolve? Yes. Will we get new content on? Yes.
Yeah.
Will the apps change? Yes. But so we've already,
Yeah. So I saw Movie Tavern on there. So that means that if somebody comes to that kiosk and they want to know Movie Tavern, then they could get directions to come to Ward 7 where the Movie Tavern is.
Sure.
So that's good. That's good. So then is there a written process as to if someone objects to the content on the kiosk as to what that process is? Has that been developed between the city and your company?
So a complaint that you don't like it,
Right.
or
Yeah,
something
right.
that's
Right.
There'll be a
the
way to
language.
communicate with them about.
Kind of like Facebook, if somebody puts something out there and you don't like it, and then you,
Get a dislike.
yeah, you dislike it. I mean, what would be the
Communicate
process?
that. I mean, you'll have our
Communicate
information.
it to who?
To our company. I'll have an
To
800.
your company,
Right.
not the city.
Right.
Is that the way you want it, Bruce? It is?
I mean, if you want to run it through the city and then to us, that's, I figured that was the answer. So,
You got a
if it's
toll-free
something-
number or
Yes,
emails or?
There'll be an 800 number, there's an email address. If it's content that's, disruptive to the group and enough dissenters, we'll take it
Okay.
off.
And do you have like categories already written someplace that you've given to these guys that says we'll accept this kind of content, but we won't accept another kind of content?
So we do have guidelines on what we will not put up on the network.
Okay, and we all know that?
That's in the,
It's not in the ordinance, so,
it's in our agreement.
Yeah, with the agreement. Yeah, we can, I mean, you want to know what that is?
yeah.
With the
I'd
details?
like to know.
We could provide
Okay.
those guidelines.
Yeah, I'd like to know what that is.
That can
Okay,
be provided.
all right, thank you.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, Mayor, call the question.
The question's been, there's been a motion to call the question. It's been seconded. All in favor of calling the question indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The question is called. All in favor of the passage of the ordinance number 22 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ordinance is passed. And on the emergency clause, all in favor of the emergency clause indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is also passed.
Mayor, for the benefit of the board, this ordinance now becomes an exhibit to the MOU that's been signed, and your passing the ordinance does that at the same time. It's not in the ordinance itself.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, we can now move on to ordinance number 23. Director Hendricks's ordinance that is on our agenda for action tonight. Director Hendricks, I'll give you the floor if you want to say any opening remarks. Let me just mention to the public that we've got here, as people have come in over the course of the 2 hours, we've got 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. We've got 13 cards, and there are probably 5 or 6 or so in favor of the ordinance, and the rest of them are against the ordinance. So I'll ask everybody not to be repetitive. I think this board is probably quite educated about what the various issues are as it relates to the proposal that Director Hendricks has before us. So again, if I could just ask that, we'll try and move through this in a very good fashion. I want to give everybody an opportunity to say whatever they would like to the board. Here comes another one. Okay. So, Director Hendricks, with that said, go ahead. I'll leave the. What?
What?
Oh, excuse me. I guess before we get to the debate, I guess we need to go ahead and have a reading of the ordinance. So, Director Hines, do you want to speak before?
Motion to recess for 10 minutes. We've been in here for 2 straight hours.
Oh, the people are groaning.
There's a motion and a second. Did I hear a second? To recess for 10 minutes. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We're in recess for. We're in recess for 10 minutes. What? back in session. Madam Clerk, first reading of the ordinance, please.
An ordinance to refer to the voters at a referendum the option to reorganize the city manager form of government, to abolish the 3 at-large term positions, to provide that the mayor should be directly elected, to provide that the 7 other members of the board of directors shall be elected by ward by plurality vote, to direct the mayor to issue an election proclamation, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to refer the voters at a referendum the option to reorganize the city manager form of government, to abolish the 3 at-large term positions, to provide that the mayor shall be directly elected, to provide that the 7 other members of the board of directors shall be elected by ward by plurality vote, to direct the mayor to issue an election proclamation, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes second reading.
Move to suspend the rules, place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to refer to the voters at a referendum the option to reorganize the city manager form of government, to abolish the 3 at-large term positions, to provide that the mayor shall be directly elected, to provide that the 7 other members of the board of directors shall be elected by ward by plurality vote, to direct the mayor to issue an election proclamation, to declare an emergency, third and final reading.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I can for just one moment, before the meeting, I handed out a memorandum with exhibits to each member of the board about this, and I discovered, and it was pointed out to me by Director Adcock, that I made a grievous error on page 12, in which I said there were 7 female members of the board currently and 4 male members. And what made it particularly egregious is that I left out Director Richardson, who was basically the father of why most of this memorandum was written, but that should be 6 and 5, and it also will affect a little bit the percentages that I've set out in various parts.
And what page is that on?
12.
I don't see it on page 12, do you? All right, very well. So you have Mr. Carpenter's memorandum and a variety of attachments. It gives quite a long chronology to the issue of representation in the city of Little Rock. So I'll commend that to. Hopefully you've had a chance to at least glance at it. We can go ahead. Director Hendricks, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'll be real brief. I want to thank those persons for coming, and I was asked what did at large mean by a few of the people that are sitting here. That is that lower number of persons that you said that wanted to speak. And I wanted to let you know I have been discriminated against ever since I've been on this board in every issue that I attempted to get passed by this board. And that's my reason. And if anybody in the minority can't understand then that's the way it is. Thank you. And I would like for, may I ask you, Mayor, are you going to let one-on-one, or are you going to let all the fours speak?
I'm gonna do a for and against until we run out of the against of the four cards. I've got more against cards than I have for cards. So
Okay, I would like to ask if Mr. Julius would be the first, because he has to go.
well, before we get to that, I've got a couple of other things. Do you want to raise this issue?
Mr. Carpenter, this folder you distributed, there's an unnumbered page listing at-large African-American directors.
Yes,
sir. Elected. It lists Cyril Hollingsworth. Cyril Hollingsworth was a Caucasian director.
That's
Perlesta Hollingsworth was an African-American who was elected. It also does not include Lottie Shackelford, and I think Lottie was an at-large director.
She was an at-large
several
director
terms, yeah.
that was both appointed and elected, as I understand it, and
So
I now have
this
two
page
grievous
isn't
errors.
numbered, but this information is inaccurate.
So that's inaccurate.
Yes, that part's inaccurate.
So Les Hollingsworth is actually what you meant by instead of Cyril Hollingsworth, and Lottie Shackelford's name was not on it. Her picture's right over there, however.
Well, she's in the memorandum also.
Okay, so, but she should be added to that. Okay.
Mayor, I have a question to Mr. Fortson's statement.
What about go ahead, Director.
Was that when we only had the 7-1 board members, the 7-1? Hey, I'm talking to you. Because we don't want to confuse these people. An at-large person back in the 50s or whatever, everybody was at large.
I'm sorry, Director Henry, I thought you were addressing the mayor. I don't know how many were on the board at that point in time. I just know that Cyril Hollingsworth is Caucasian, and that Les Hollingsworth, with whom I served on the airport commission, was an African-American elected at large. And I think, as I pointed out, Lottie Shackelford also served terms and served as mayor.
Yeah, but what I want to make the board, the audience aware is that when Lottie and Shackelford was sitting on the board, everybody was at large. So don't be deceived, okay?
My only point is that this information that was
Yeah,
distributed
no,
is
that's not
incomplete.
relevant to what I'm,
All right, Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, Mayor. When this first came up, I think I mentioned that this issue is much bigger than my own personal opinion or preference. And Director Adcock, I want to thank you for making that correction. And Tom, I forgive you since you called Dean Director Adcock. And I do want to thank you for your hard work on this. And I know it took a lot of your time given everything else we placed on your agenda. And Mayor, my request for this information to give some kind of historical perspective, I know you asked a couple of questions around the legality of it, so that Chelsea or whomever from the press was covering this would have enough actual and factual information so we can base our comments and or decisions on actual factual information rather than motions or agendas or whatever however we may want to couch it. But it was for informational purpose only. And I think when we talked about this maybe a month ago, I made reference to this is something bigger than what I think should or should not happen. And I asked for that information, Mayor, for that purposes, and I think it was a series of questions. I think Tom answered and Scott answered some of them, dealing with the historical perspective of how we got to where we are, the part, Gene and Joan, about the gender makeup, racial makeup, geographical makeup, historically of at-large positions. So it wasn't anything with respect to, let's say it was just for information purposes only, Mayor. And I know you asked Tom a couple of questions that night about the legality of it. And I think that that's the kind of thing we need to have in place before us, some real, truthful, actual, factual information so that when we have conversations about matters like this, it's not based on anything other than information, not based on emotion, or it's not based on any personal agendas from that standpoint. So with that, I'm through with that, Mayor. So that was my request for the information about a month or so ago. And I know you added to those questions that night. And it was a whole host of questions. And hopefully we had it done in time, Tom, so that Chelsea could write about it before she leaves us, and we could have had some kind of public information on the information that we're talking about.
All right, Director Hendricks, did you have another comment?
Yeah, the comment that I wanted to share with the audience is that 2 at-large positions.
Did you?
The at-large positions that I am challenging tonight, it exceeds that of the President of the United States, the Governor of the state of Arkansas, and the legislators. All of these persons sit for terms, but we have allowed this board to allow people to sit here for 20 plus years, and this minority is challenging that issue. Thank you.
All right, well, let's get through this if we can. Again, I've got lots of cards, so I'd ask everybody to be pointed in your comments and brief. Again, the board's well familiar with these issues. I'll call on Julius Larry first.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon to the mayor, the city manager who runs stuff, Mr. Carpenter, and all the honorable members of the board. I rise as the publisher of the Little Rock Sun community newspaper and also as a resident of Ward 1. From Ms. Henderson is my ward director. The problem that we have here doesn't really involve any one of you personally. It's the issue of minority vote dilution. Minority vote dilution. And the state and this city is guilty of minority vote dilution, whether it's in congressional districts right down to the city of Little Rock. And I'll give you an example of how this works. Once upon a time in a great Texas city, we had an all-white city council. And they decided one day that because of the number of African Americans and Hispanics and Asians, it might be a good idea to kind of share some of the power. So the first African American was elected to the city council. But what city council decided to do was to offset the power of his vote, since he represented, actually, Ward 3 at the time. So they added one at-large position. The at-large position just happened to be a white male that represented no constituency whatsoever. So if the city had 7 wards, they were kind of divided equally along population lines geographically, and each ward elected its own director. But when we got the second minority-owned council and Hispanic, a second at-large position was added. That was a white male. Then the third person came to council was an Asian. A lawsuit was then filed because a third at-large position was added. So the 3 minorities that came on council by way of the vote of the constituents of each ward that elected them, the powers that be, the great white fathers, added 3 at-large positions that really canceled out the votes of the very 3 minorities that we had elected. And they didn't see anything wrong with that. Well, the problem, when it was found unconstitutional, was this. With 7 wards representing a constituency, the money was divided up by each of the wards. The 3 at-large people ran citywide, which is a different campaign altogether. But when we traced the money, instead of it being divided by 7, it was divided by 10. And we were going, well, why do the 3 at-large people need to be getting part of the city's budget? They don't have any constituents. So that was a real problem. And then, of course, well, who did they represent? The at-large people represented literally nobody but business interests uptown, as we called it, the Chamber of Commerce. So we want to know, well, where is this money going? If we have 7 wards and we're dividing the taxpayers' money by 10, we have 3 people that need to account for all of the money since they don't represent any constituents. So I don't want to see that happen here. And I just moved up here from Houston, by the way, and I can see that we have been discriminating against minorities here, but it's institutionalized. It's nothing that you all did. It's been going on for years. We've never had an African American elected to Congress from the state of Arkansas since Arkansas became a state. That's no accident. It is intentional racial discrimination, but we don't want to call it that. So I'm through speaking about this. I support this ordinance because if we don't get it on the ballot and let all of the citizens of Little Rock make a decision, somebody's going to have to file a lawsuit. And in Texas, we love to file lawsuits when it comes to injustice. So I support what Ms. Henderson is doing, maybe not in the words that she's saying it, but we know better. History is always good, Tom, but we need to live in the here and now. We have a new generation of millennials, and all us old people are going to be dying out one day, Mark, but we need to leave the city in good hands. And if we have people who don't represent any constituency at all, what are they doing on our board of directors? Thank you very much.
I know there are people for and against all of this, but I'd like to try and keep the applause down to a minimum. We try to keep a decorum here, and this is not a campaign rally. It's trying to have thoughtful deliberation. So I say that to both sides. I'm not trying to limit anybody's conversation. Just we'll try and get through this as quickly as we can. Ronnie Jackson, who wishes to speak against it?
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Mayor, Board of Directors, my name is Ronnie Jackson, City Manager Bruce Moore. I represent the East Little Rock Neighborhood Association, and I want to have our constituents to stand that are here that are against this ordinance. If you all would stand. All right. This represents East Little Rock and some Ward 1 members, residents that are against this proposal. And the reason why we in the East Little Rock area had some issues come up, and we had a director that's at large, Director Adcock, came in when Timex was talking about what they were going to do and not going to do in the area. She was an advocate for us at this board and in our community at all of our meetings that we held. She was there for us. Since then, she stayed with us. She didn't leave us there. She stayed with us every step of the way. In 2015, we came before you all to petition for East Little Rock to get a summer program. We started with a pilot program, and now we are full-fledged summer program at East Little Rock. And so we thank you for that, because it gave families an opportunity to have their kids placed in the East Little Rock area. Number two, and also in 2016, just last year, we had over 90 kids registered for the program. Now, not 90 kids showed up each time. It varies. When talking to staff, it varies from 40 to 50 kids. So that was two. She's also involved with our community night out and in our community in general. At the end of that summer program last year, it was Director Adcock that came and supported us. We had a barbecue per se. Earl grilled on the grill. We gave kids hot dogs. We partnered with Cromwell Architects. They provided T-shirts for the kids and Mr. Eckhart as well. And so we're advocating that in this case, I don't know the whole history of at-large directors, but in this case, this at-large director represents the constituents in the East Little Rock area, and I'm proud to support her. Not only that, I got involved with NUSA. I am Neighborhood Connections President, and went to NUSA this year, Birmingham. And I'm proud to say I wasn't here last week because my wife and I were celebrating an anniversary, so I couldn't be here to wear my blue NUSA shirt. But we're bringing NUSA to Little Rock in 2020, and that's because we went to Birmingham. We got with the city CVB, and Director Adcock did all the footwork with working with those persons to bring NUSA to Little Rock in 2020. That's revenue to our hotels, restaurants, all the places there. So I just want to thank you for that. And also, Mayor, you were here there last year. We partnered with, again, East Villages and Cromwell and the East Little Rock residents to paint homes in the area. And we painted about 5 homes in the area with her support, with your support. And so at-large directors, for me, I don't know the history, but this at-large director has been great. And traveling to NUSA this past month, and I'll be done, Director Warwick and Director Wright, we gathered so much information to bring back to our residents here that I can't wait to get it going. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Johnny Hassan?
God's peace be upon you. I'd like to address the issue, peace be upon everybody, and in reference to the social economic disparities. And the social economic disparity has been documented. You've had reports, written reports. For example, it talks about the differential. The large elections favor the winners that stand at $30,000, $100 some dollars, and awards at $8,900, meaning that the wealth is the one that control the socioeconomic outcome of many of these elections. Also in that report, it talks about even those disparities between the runner-ups for $50,000 some dollars versus $30,000 for those in competition. And when if you went with wards, the price would be 8,000 plus, I'm not doing the details, 8,900 something versus 8,700. And so my issue is that I asked Director Adcock about what she feels about this, and her comment that this would be cause too much confusion and it really wouldn't change nothing. And I guess because of her position and other things that she had said, and I quote from the newspaper, I feel like we need to solve the problems of Little Rock. And my point to y'all as a part of the director, a leader that you have here, that she would not sign her name to the issue of Robert E. Lee and Dr. King. And I suggest this, that the colonel led a war where hundreds of thousands of Caucasians, combatants, non-combatants, lost their lives to the mainstream for mainstream slavery to support you. Dr. King represented a nonviolent movement where hundreds of thousands of Americans marched on D.C. to be assassinated by a Caucasian gun violence that looked like you. So my question is that the racial disparity here is also economic disparity, because obviously the NRA, she's a NRA rated A plus. 1% have been controlling this city in terms of our economic benefit. So the wards are poor wards, and so it's easy for Mr. Compuris to argue about the position that he's in, because the wards he represent an economic difference, socio-economic difference. So we're not talking about racism, my dear. We're talking about socio-economic disparities, which is immoral, okay, and which is socially unacceptable if you're a people of moral character. And my challenge to you is that the ward system at least makes us one vote representing one person, and therefore there's equality in that system. Otherwise, you financial people, the NRA can finance all of these governors, leaders, okay? And that's where the money's coming from in this particular state, starting from the governor on down. Peace be upon you.
Thank you, sir. Now, Philip Tappan.
Mr. Mayor, directors, thank you for allowing me to speak. Philip Tappan, as the card said. I reside here in Little Rock. I'm a lifelong Arkansan. I've been in the city of Little Rock since I was out of college and in my young 20s, and my hairline indicates that's a long time ago. I've had the pleasure of being appointed by you all to serve on your city commission or the Advertising Promotion Commission, where I was also the chair. I'm concerned about Little Rock. I feel after hearing some of these people speak how much we have in common, particularly the two gentlemen talking about economic disparities. The very city I think we referred to in Texas, I have 3 children that reside there now. They're Central High graduates. They were born here in Little Rock and have lived their lives. They've sought greater economic opportunities elsewhere. We've got some real concerns. And I don't think this kind of regressive and unfair repealing of our city structure is the way to go about it. I further think that in previous city reorganizations of types of management structure, whether it be the elected stronger mayor, whether it be other types of structure, we've had committees and commissions get together to discuss and adjudicate and build consensus. I've heard of no plan. I know that I'm myself and many business people that would be willing to serve and be active in those types of discussions. Finally, Mayor, regrettably, you're moving on. And I think with any type of team structure and great functioning body, it's important to have that leader be part of how that structure is planned. Could we not wait at least until after a general election and build more of a consensual plan with the new mayor and with many more people in the community involved? Finally, I'll say this. regardless of the personalities of who we've had as the at-large directors, I've seen a really high level of involvement in some areas that are important. Sometimes the city director that's in a particular district or in their ward is consumed with all the activities going on in that area. But we also need directors to think about the strategy, the culture, the vision, particularly the city directors that have served with me that were at large on our city advertising promotion commission had a very high level concern and viewpoint of the entire city. And I think that's important to have a good mix among this body. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Let's see, David Coleman.
Excuse me, good afternoon. I appreciate you all allowing me to speak today. This is my first time speaking in front of this body, but it won't be my last, I guarantee you. I am against at-large votes, at-large positions, simply because I grew up in this city. I moved away, just as that gentleman said, for 35 years because there were no opportunities. I come back 3 years later, and the very neighborhoods that I grew up in are worse than they were 30 years ago. How is that possible? How is it that there are at-large commissioners or directors who are secretly running candidates against other candidates in other wards? How is that possible? How is that possible? How is it that you can tell me that you are for all of the city, and when you drive south of 630, there's nothing there? How can you tell me that? It makes no sense whatsoever for you all to be doing what you're doing. If you're for the city, then prove it. But based on your record, you haven't proven that, okay? So if you say that the at-large positions are what the people want in Little Rock, put it on the ballot, okay? And if the people want you, then they'll vote for you, okay? If you don't put it on the ballot, then that says that you're cowards. And you know for a fact that your positions are not what the people want. And the bottom line is this: I love this city. That's why I moved back to this city, because I wanted to bring some of the things that I did in Memphis and Nashville and Los Angeles back to my home city. But I've ran into nothing but red tape because of this board. And if you really want to solve the problems of Little Rock, you got to address everything. I drive in this city every day. I go across this city. I see streets being repaired in West Little Rock, North Little Rock, west of Little Rock, north of 630. South of 630, nothing. Ditches, garbage. And you can say, well, that's the neighborhood. No, that's not the neighborhood. You need to create some incentive for these people in this city to want to upgrade their neighborhoods. And that comes from people believing in their leaders. Part of the problem in this city, I say it every day on my radio show, there's no leadership in this city. I hate to offend you, but if it was, all you got to do is go south of 630 and tell me where your leadership is. Thank you.
Rhonda Ross.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rhonda Ross. I'm president of Love Neighborhood Association. To us, at-large members in our case, it's like a rebound to help in areas where needed with other directors due to illness, sick, overwhelmed, or whatever. About 5 years ago or more, Ms. Jones came to Love Neighborhood just as humble and helped us in everything we needed, from building, revitalizing homes. We probably have like 10 or more homes that's being revitalized, some for sale. That neighborhood has came up tremendously. We have a ways to go, but it came up tremendously. And we just thank you, Ms. Adcock. Thank you. She was a jewel to us. We need our at-large members to help the directors. It's like a plan B. What is the plan B for this one, for this? Who will step up when help is needed? All right, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Robert Webb.
Jesus. Good evening. I'm Robert Webb, community advocate, former commissioner of Little Rock Housing Authority. And I just want to say thank you for allowing me this opportunity, Mayor, city directors, city staff. You know, I had a dream last night. I had a dream that I went to sleep and y'all voted on this, and directors from wards 1, 2, 4, and 6 voted for it, and everybody else voted against it. Because that's what makes sense, right? Because if you actually vote for this and you're in Ward 3, Ward 5, or Ward 7, then essentially, you're pitting them against each other. I get that. I get that. But Ms. Hendricks made a comment earlier that her and Director Richardson have tried to put forth legislation that would impact our communities. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like you to take you on a little tour of Ward 1, parts of Ward 1 and parts of Ward 2. So we're going to talk about Census Tracts 11, 12, 13, 18, 45, and 47. And you say, well, why are those significant? Well, those census tracts have the highest amount of poverty, the highest amount of unemployment, and guess what? The highest amount of crime. But you all say, every chance you get, that you are for crime. You are for decreasing the amount of crime in our city, but yet everything that Director Hendricks, Director Richardson have put forth has been squashed without question. Now, let me walk you through this thing some more. 46% of the people who live in those census tracts, 42% if you average it out over the 6 census tracts, 46% of those folks are above the age of 65. It's really important how we treat our seniors and how we treat our kids. About 38% of the people who live in those census tracts, am I getting that right? No, I'm sorry. 23% of the people who live in those census tracts, if you average it out over wards, are kids. Are kids. Lance, check my numbers, because you like to check my numbers. Let me tell you where to go to check them, though. When you go to Metro Plan. Or if you want to, you can go to American Fact Finder, put in Pulaski County. Make sure you put in Pulaski County, Census Tract 45, 47, 18, and you can average them out. Now, I want to be clear, because I want you to understand that everybody talks about Director Adcock, and we love Director Adcock. I have no issue with Director Adcock as a person, or Director Fortson, or Director Compuris. I have no issue with anyone. As a person, I think you're all great as people. But as directors, I'm really disappointed in you. Because again, we've been out in the trenches trying to improve our city, trying to improve our wards. And when we come before you with things that we think can improve our ward, you shoot it down without even a conversation. And now we sit here and we ask you to place this on the ballot. So everybody's come down and said how great Director Adcock is. Well, I know for one, Director Adcock's voting for it because she's got support for it. So we don't have to worry about that, right? Because she's got support for it. So we don't have to worry about Director Adcock. Now, we might have to worry about Directors Fortson and Compuris because nobody's come up and say how wonderful y'all are and how great y'all have been to them. But I will, because I don't want you to be left out. You guys have been great to me. I love you very much. As we talk about these census tracts, and we talk about unemployment, Director Richards brought forth the ordinance that said that before he asked that you have bid preference on contracts that would just give bid preference for anybody bidding on a contract. He was thinking construction jobs because again, in part of that is his ward. 18, 13, parts of 11, and parts of 12 belong to Director Richardson. Part of, I want to say part of 45 too, I'm not sure, but so I'm not going to say it. But parts of those wards belong to Director Richardson. And in those wards, if you look at Metro Plan tells you, you have over 7,000 people unemployed in those wards. Now, that might not sound significant, right? It might not sound significant, but if you think about this, 7,000, one census tract only has 840 people in the census tract. You know where that census tract is? That census tract 12, I think it's 45 around Children's Hospital. I think it only has 840 people in that census tract. Another ward has 2,300. Another ward has 3,100. When you start going through those wards, 7,000 is kind of significant, don't you think? I would. Director Richardson introduced the ordinance. Director Computer said, you know what, I'm going to work with Ken and we're going to bring it back. That was 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Director Hendricks, she also has high unemployment in her ward. She put forth the ordinance that said, hey, the first 100 jobs from the sales tax should go to Little Rock residents. Director Forson said, I want us to have a regional view. But you didn't have a regional vote. You had a local vote for the sales tax, but you wanted to have a regional view when it came to jobs. How do you do that? I talked to a good friend today who I have a lot of respect for, and I told him about this ordinance, and he said, this thing is never going to fly. I told him, nah, I believe it's a chance. I believe we really have a chance to make this thing happen. He said, no, he said, what you got to understand is what you're doing is you're talking about a power grab. He said, this is a power grab. He said, if you understand why you have the 3 at large anyway, this is a power grab. You have 4 wards south of 630, 1, 2, 6, and 7. You have 3 north of 630, 3, 4, and 5. Those wards south of 630, predominantly black. Those wards north of 630, predominantly white. So I said, I don't believe you. It's not a power grab. It's just an opportunity to have good government. If our directors would just come on and step up and help us with these issues we're trying to fix in our communities, we'd be more than happy to support this or be against this. We'd be more than happy to do that. Be more than happy. But that's not the case. Because even tonight, you're still not supportive. Nobody's supportive of this. Nobody is even supportive of the conversation to talk about this. And what troubles me even more about that is that, again, if you're doing a great job and you feel that you're doing a great job, why is it an issue? Mr. Phillip, he came up and talked about he's been in Little Rock all his life. I have too. I've been here all my life. And I remember I want to say 1976, I went to Dunbar Community Center for an infrastructure meeting. They talked about putting curb and gutter on 21st Street between Adams and Lewis. 1976. There's still no gutters on Adams between Adams and Lewis. Still no gutters there. They've put forth effort to address the issues of their community, of their wards, respectively. And every time they've been voted against. Director Hendricks put forth the ordinance when we were having all the police brutality and we were having officer-involved shootings. Director Hendricks put forth the ordinance asking that we hire all the police officers from Little Rock, or the first 100 police officers for Little Rock. Voted down again. At every opportunity, Director Hendricks or Director Richardson has presented something that would have an impact, a positive impact in our community, you shot it down. What's really interesting about that is a couple of weeks after you voted down the ordinance to give bid preference to companies that use disconnected youth and adults, a week later, that was during a residency. Director Hendricks put in a residency clause. I apologize, Director Hendricks, I moved too fast. Director Hendricks asked that we put in a residency, put forth a residency ordinance. The residency ordinance, two times, Mr. Hendricks, that's right, 2 times. She put forth 2 residency ordinances that were voted down both times. Well, the second time, you all put forth an ordinance that gave bid preference to companies that were headquartered in Little Rock. You were against residency on one side, but for it on the other. Never a conversation. We're constantly having these conversations. So what I'd like to ask you today is that as we discuss this, as we move forward, I'd like to see my dream fulfilled. I'd like to see just the directors from wards 1, 2, 4, and 6 vote against this. But again, I know that's not going to happen, because if you do, then somebody will probably run somebody against you, like Director Richardson's often finding people running against him because he has a at-large member who wants to remove him, so he's constantly having people run against him. So I understand that. I understand you not wanting to vote, but I want to tell you, thank you, Director Richardson, Director Hendricks, for keep fighting the good fight. It's not always easy, but thank you very much. And I hope today that you can give us a vote that says we can put this on the ballot. That would be great if we could get a vote that says we can put this on the ballot. Again, Director Hendricks, thank you. Peace be unto you, my friends.
Thank you, sir. The next card I have is from Pam Powell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board, for
Welcome back.
allowing us to speak. Thank you. As a citizen of Little Rock, I was once asked, why was I at City Hall supporting folks who were not a part of my neighborhood? It was because the people in that other neighborhood were my friends, and because I care about all of Little Rock, not just my area. We are in this city together. We breathe the same air. I'm thankful to have my ward director, Ms. Doris Wright. She's been very helpful in many ways for our specific area. I'm also thankful that I have at-large city directors to help our city as well. Just like a general practitioner in the medical field, Dr. Campuris, the at-large directors know a little something, and sometimes a lot of something, about everything in our city. I don't know a single person that knows everything, but a specialist physician will know a whole lot about a specific area. I look at Director Wright as our specialist and our at-large directors as general practitioners. I believe that getting rid of our at-large directors who are more attuned to the big picture of our city will lead to more polarization of our city, as each director would become mostly concerned about their specific area and not the big picture of the city of Little Rock. I urge each of you to step back and look at the big picture of our Little Rock. Teamwork makes the dream work, and I thank each of you for your service to this city.
Thank you, ma'am. Marthella Johnson.
Good evening. Thank you. This is my first time speaking before this group, too. It's my first time being in this space, actually. And I have something prepared here, but what I did want to touch on is that, you know, looking around on the walls at the faces and the pictures, it kind of reflects the city. And I'm a minority, and I'm looking, and I only see 2 black faces on the wall. And that's important because that's our representation here. That, you know, we are in the minority, we're few in number. I work with Arkansas community organizations. I'm a community organizer. And our constituency would like to urge Little Rock City Board directors to vote in favor of the ordinance that would give Little Rock residents the chance to vote on a proposal to elect our city boards by wards instead of the mixed at-large and ward systems we have now. Placing the all-ward proposal on the ballot this November instead of during the special election will mean that a greater number of voters will have the chance to consider and vote on the structure of our city government. More people turn out during the general election than during special elections. This hybrid at-large system has existed for 25 years, and we would like that for the voters to have a chance to consider an alternative to the current structure. We now have a mayor with more power who is elected citywide. So do we also need 3 other positions that are elected citywide? Does the current city board represent the city of Little Rock fairly? And my answer to that question will be no, because I live south of 630, and I do cross that line, and I do see where their streets are nice and the grass are cut and the alleys are clean. You know, they do have ditches and stoplights and stop signs, and it's all nice and pretty and flowers. And then when I go back to my neighborhoods and the neighborhoods in the community where I work, I see where there's overgrown and brush and, abandoned homes and a lot of different things that need to be taken care of that you don't see north of 630. So my answer to that question would be no, and I would ask for you all to please give the people of Little Rock the chance to make their voices heard this November on whether to keep the old mixed at-large and ward city board or to change to a fairer and more representative form of city government. We do not need blue ribbon committees that no one pays attention to studying the issue. We do not need to decide the big question of how the people of Little Rock want to govern themselves at a special election where a small percentage of voters show up. So I'm asking for you all to please vote for the ordinance to place an all-ward proposal on the ballot for this November. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next card I have is from Ron Muse.
I've written comments, and then everyone gets up here and speaks, and I want to change things, but I'll just speak from my heart. But I first want to say that I have been witness to and a participant in several lengthy processes over the years, like Vision Little Rock and Future Little Rock, where the ideas for our city's growth included a form of government such as we now have, with 7 ward directors and 3 at large. I have also been a participant in and the witness to the betterment of our neighborhoods, south of 630, very often assisted by our current 3 at large directors. The 3 have agreed on how their respective roles can cover both neighborhoods and small as well as large business needs throughout Little Rock. They also work very well together, bringing new opportunities such as the Clinton Center. And as my good friend Ronnie Johnson mentioned, Neighborhoods USA, which is slated to be held in Little Rock for the 3rd time in 2020. I remember calling Gene Fortson one day and saying, we've got a really big problem over here at 800 Washington. People are dumping stuff here. We can't get anyone to help us out. Gene came over, took a look at it. I guess he made some phone calls because it was cleaned up straight away. And I had to ask a lot of different people within the area, including codes officers and the police. And no one was able to solve the problem. But Gene comes out, takes a look, and it's gone. And of course, Joan is very involved in the neighborhoods in our area, as others have mentioned. And I want to remind people that it hasn't been that long ago that the 3 at-large directors came together and presented an ordinance that saved Forest Hills from being wiped off the face of the earth. That's south of 630. There has been over $5 million worth of infrastructure in that area since then, proposed to the full board and supported by the at-large directors. So let's keep our form of government. Please vote against this.
Thank you, sir. The next card I have is from Brian Gregory.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Gregory. This is my first time being here. I am a former student of UA Little Rock. Thank you, Dean Comforts, for your service on our Board of Trustees. I was also the Student Government Association president at UA Little Rock. So I've been very involved in just how can our city be better and what can we do. And so just hearing the conversations, a lot of it has been on whether or not the form of city government is good or bad, and you know that's up for debate because everybody has different experiences with it. But one thing as a political science student that I learned, and one thing as a student government president that I learned, is that the people matter, and that the people have to determine what they want. When I was a student government president, there were a lot of different things that I wanted to do, but because the people around me said, no, we don't want to do that, I chose not to do it. Now, the ordinance, from my understanding, is only asking that it be put to a vote. It's not saying we're going to get rid of it. It's not saying that we're going to keep it. It's only asking that it get put for a vote. And so one of the things that former President Obama used to say was that if you believe in something, then you have to convince people of it. And so if you believe in not having at-large positions be part of the board of directors, then you should say that and make your case to all the people of Little Rock and in your wards and in your districts. If you are against changing the city form of government, then make the case. Make it in your wards, make it in your districts, make it over all across the city of Little Rock. But the thing is like we have to understand that it's not necessarily about whether we're going to get rid of it or not. It's about giving the people a choice. Now, just to speak as a millennial, now I currently I'm living with my parents right now because I'm a recent college grad, so you know it is what it is on that. But I plan to move back to Little Rock because I love this city and I want to see it prosper and I want to see it be better. And I know from talking with my friends and people that are interested in the city of Little Rock that are my age, I'm 22 years old, we look at this system of government and we are not pleased. We're not pleased with how it looks because we understand that I can't remember her name, but she said that representation matters. And so the thing is like, again, and granted, I'm not old enough to know how you all have done in the city. I'm sure you've done an excellent job in the ways that you can. The only point that I'm trying to make here is that if you put it to the people to a vote and they vote yes, then I think that's a good. Then the people have spoken. If they vote no, the people have spoken. But it has to be brought to the people. There needs to be forums. There needs to be education on this issue because the thing is like when you hear it, you don't necessarily understand everything when at large, that seems like a great idea, or it seems like a bad idea. But the thing is, regardless of where you stand on this position, people deserve to have a choice about it. And so my support for this resolution is not to say whether or not I feel like the at-large positions are good or bad, because again, I don't necessarily know everything that you all have done. I've gone to school in Little Rock all of my life, and including going to UA Little Rock, which is in Ward 2, I believe. But I don't necessarily know the stories that some of the other people express. But what I do know is that it's important to bring issues to the people. And regardless of what you feel about the position, it's important to bring it to the people of the city of Little Rock. We're at an inflection point. We're at a point to where our city can change, and people my age want to see Little Rock be better. And this is a way to get started. Not saying we should be for, you should vote because you believe in the city, the system we have now, or don't believe in the system now, but vote because you care about the people of Little Rock and because you want to see people have a chance to make their opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is that T-shirt a relic?
Yes, it's from the LBJ Library in Austin.
Very good. Thank you. And I can see why you were elected president of the class. Okay, Keith Wingfield is next.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. I remember when I was 22 years of age, but I turned 63 yesterday. So, and I moved to Little Rock in 1975. I've been here a long time. I consider myself a Little Rock resident. I grew up in Benton, and I indeed graduated from UALR in 1977, so that's an institution that's very near and dear to my heart too. I came here tonight not knowing what to expect from some of the other speakers, but my primary reason for coming here to express my sentiments that I'm against this ordinance And the reason I'm here is to defend three people that I think have done just an outstanding job for our city. And to blame our city's problems to the at-large directors, I think is a disservice to them. Our city may have problems. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. And we have a long way to go, but we've come a long way too. The answer to this issue about the dilution of vote, well, if that were true, then the dilution of vote would also have kept Barack Obama from becoming president, because we had a very small minority, but we elected him president of the United States. And I think that speaks to the candidates you vote on somebody for what they do, not what necessarily the ward that they might live in. So I'm here to say that this ordinance, while something might need to be put into some type of study or something like that, this ordinance is not a good ordinance for the purpose of what it's been introduced for, and I would encourage you to vote against it.
Thank you, sir. Mac Faulkner's next.
Well, thank you
We're all
for.
out of cards. Excuse me for 1 second, Mr. Faulkner. Yeah, that completed all of the cards against. Or excuse me, all the cards for. Go ahead, Mr. Faulkner.
I've noticed after listening to the speakers, I may be the only person in the room that has served both as a at-large representative and a ward representative. I served on the school boards, Pulaski County, from 1980 to 87, and Little Rock from 87 to 90. Ran 6 elections. I lost a runoff in my 6th election, probably the best thing that ever happened to me. But the Pulaski County at-large position was, Pulaski County's a big area. And when you run for election, there's a chemistry that you share with all parts of your districts. It's much harder position, I think, than a ward position. Joan represents all of her areas uniquely well with a different chemistry in the different situations that you work with. I know I've been in some areas where you were at. I served with 43 board members in 10 years, and every one of those people were a different person with their own ideas. You run on 3 issues that you can't change their mind on, but you deal with 200 during your term of service. When you're at large, you got to know what all of your constituency wants, what they think. When you're in a ward situation, you really only have a much narrower group of people that supported you. Your allegiances are much more to them. The at-large situation, you feel an obligation to each of those areas that supported you at election time. You really try to serve their needs. In the ward situation, it's more like a negotiation, divvying up resources. Well, you got this, you get this, because you don't really have that chemistry when you ran for election. You developed. I ran basically on PTA groups, not teachers or not other things. And so based on that experience, my statement I gave to you in advance, let me just read parts of it. I firmly feel what I put here in writing. Disadvantaged groups have fared very well in the last 50 years with a split form of government, state versus federal. There's a very close parallel between ward and at-large and state versus federal offices, I feel, because of the reasons of their perspective. The broader representation of the federal government has been very beneficial to the disadvantaged groups. Look at the civil rights laws that have come about. That wouldn't have happened from individual states. the higher level of government that you have generally is fair to all of the people. And I draw the parallel, and I think with a great deal of accuracy, at-large directors or serve like the federally elected representatives, and the ward people serve more like state elected representatives. And there's a need for both. You don't want to have 50 separate countries with no federal government. If you have 10 ward positions and no at-large, it's kind of like you have 10 different Little Rocks and just negotiating resources. So I'd urge you to keep the balance. I think history has shown that a balance between at-large and ward gives the best outcome for everybody. Keep what you have now. Keep what is working, even though we still have lots of problems to be worked out. I'd urge you to stay the course with how we are elected now.
Thank you, sir. The next card I have is from Chris Burks.
Good evening, directors. Chelsea told me she was looking forward to staying until 1 tonight, so I think we'll get out of here before then. This is actually the third time I've been before the city board. For those that don't know me, I'm a young lawyer here in town. I'm not 22. I'm 33, and I've got 3 points for you. But State Director Richardson, I want to talk about your brother Keith in a second, because he was one of my coaches south of 630. But what I want to ask you tonight is, as a young lawyer, as a 33-year-old who has done some constitutional litigation. I was here on the taxi monopoly. I was here on the political lawsuit, and now I'm here on the city government thing. But what I want to ask you is, as a young person, as someone who hears the discontent that's out there, sometimes the cynicism, the lack of understanding between people in our city. It's not just endemic to our city. It happens all over the country. That's very real. And the voting rights, the tie between economic power and political power and voting rights and voting districts is also very real. You can do it in fractions, 3/7, 3/10, 3/11. Those are very real issues. They're actually very real to me. I was actually a plaintiff in a voting rights lawsuit. I was so fired up about this topic, about economic and political power for underrepresented minorities, that I became a plaintiff in a lawsuit. That's something a lot of my friends would never dream of. Chris, you sued someone? Well, yeah, it was an important issue, and when we don't speak up on things that matter, what matters? In our lives, we get one chance. But what I want to say is, someone who's passionate about those issues, as a young person, as someone who's been before you on some constitutional issues before, this is not the way to do it, in my opinion. There are very real issues. They include political issues, economic issues. There are solutions to those. A rise in the minimum wage, for example, might be one. $12 an hour. That might be a very real solution that could get voted on. I was a part of a group that was funded, in full disclosure, by 50 for the Future and the Chamber of Commerce. I'm not here to represent them, but it was funded by them. And we met on Sunday afternoons as a group of young people, and we looked at county government, we looked at business, we looked at community groups, we looked at city government. We intentionally didn't meet with y'all at Director Compuris's direction. We wanted to do an outside group. We met with the sheriff, a lot of people. Sunday afternoons for a year. It was fun. But we looked really closely at this, and I'll be really direct, Director Hendricks. I wanted to make this an issue. I wanted to just change the wards. That was my perspective as a plaintiff in voting rights lawsuits, as a lawyer who's done constitutional law, read the case law, studied it. I was really fired up about going from a 3/11 to a 3 or 4/7 system. I thought that was the silver bullet going in. But I studied it for a year, and I looked at it, and the consensus of our group, of the young people that looked at it, was those are very real issues. But there are other very real issues that are just as pressing, that are part of that, and your ordinance just deals with one of them. There are issues from our perspective as a young person that relate to the structure of city government itself. And you can throw around terms like structural racism or historic racism, all those things that you've experienced in your life, Director Hendricks, and that are important, and that are very real to you, Director Richardson, as we talked about your brother who was my coach. And, anything you disagree with that I say tonight didn't come from him. He was a great coach, as a lot of great servants are in this city. But to me, to the people that studied it, the structure of city government led as much to these disparate outcomes that you see in your neighborhoods and all our neighborhoods as the ward system itself. You have a semi-strong mayor. You have an attorney that reports to the board, not to the mayor. You have staff that reports to a city manager. That is a hybrid system that's evolved over time that your research got, Director Richardson. That is much so as the ward structure leads to, you can call it inaction or whatever your perspective is. So if something is going to go to the voters, and I agree things should go to the voters, and in full disclosure, I have met with political consultants and funders on a ballot initiative on this issue. It's that important to me. And you would be surprised at people who are interested in that topic. But my experience has been they're not interested just in changing the ward structure. That is maybe a solution to some of an issue. But in their perspective and in my perspective, there's a broader discussion that needs to happen about the structure of government itself and also their fair representation, because that's very important, to me, to you all, to everyone. And so if you can do those things together, if you can look at the structure of government and the wards at the same time, and do so, maybe it's through a ballot initiative, maybe it's through this board referring it out. I think that you can, as Isaiah says, I think we can reason together. I think you can get, that's what a board does, right? It develops consensus and reasons together. So I appreciate y'all's time. I never dreamed I would come to the city board so much growing up, or that I would be a plaintiff, but I'm sure y'all didn't dream y'all would be here till 9:30 either. It's funny how things work out. But I really do appreciate y'all's service. I appreciate y'all's time. I think if we can reason together, we can address these, not only the underlying political and economic issues that are very real, but we can continue to move the city forward and all leave our mark. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next card I have is from Gregory Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor and Director, for the opportunity to speak. I'm going before you because I am for at large. Ms. Hendrick, I would like to tell you, you're doing a good job, but sometimes we can get bogged down in different areas that somebody can come in and help you. It's not that she's stepping on your toes, but she has been a blessing to our East End side.
If you will talk into the microphone,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
She has been a blessing to the East End side, Ms. Jones. I know you mean well, and you are a good person, but sometimes we can get bogged down that we forget the little people. There's no harm to asking for help. Okay? So we still love you. All right? We still love you. And we have nothing against you. But, Ms. Jones, I would like to thank you for the work that you have done down there, not just with the East End, but with the East End community that my wife runs. You have helped us. You have helped us clean up our area. Yes, it is a poor area, but as community people in that area, we have to take responsibility for our area, not just the board, but us. But with help and guidance from you and you, we can do it. So please vote to keep the enlarged people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. That completes the cards that I have on this matter. If there's no other discussion, we can go ahead and move for a vote. I've heard, is it a call for the question? Is there a second? There's a second to call the question. All in favor of calling the question indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Nay. I believe the ayes have it. Roll call on calling the question, please.
Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Compuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Peck, Director Hines, Vice Mayor Webb. Be 7-3.
I vote to 7-3. The question's been called. All in favor of the passage of the ordinance indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. I believe the ordinance has failed. Thank you all very much, and thank you for your conversation and the communication to the board. I'm certain that this dialogue will continue. All right, if we could have a little order as you leave. We still have one more item on our agenda. We're now moved on to citizen communications. I've got 3 cards. We leave 3 minutes to each one of you to bring items to us that have not been before us. I'll call on David Porter first, please. Mr. Porter.
Thank you. I haven't been in this room since 1990 or 91 when I served on the City Beautiful Commission, and I worked with Mayor Valines and Sharon Priest to get a new arena built in town, because back then we had Barton Coliseum, and we needed something newer, bigger, fancier to draw NCAA tournaments and concerts and what have you. Well, I love basketball. I'm prejudiced, I have to say that. And so I've come to realize we have a need in our city for another type of facility. And I actually met a couple of years ago with Mr. Moore, and I hope you don't mind me coming to the group. I told you I wanted to do everything I could to get this going, and I still am willing to help in any way. I have been to cities across the country now for regional and national basketball tournaments. We homeschool our youngest son, and he plays on the Little Rock Flames. And so we've been to lots of cities around where they have a facility that houses a lot of basketball courts. This past week I was at Hendricks College for a referee. I referee basketball, and we held a training session with a team camp there. I was also at Oklahoma State for referee session, team camp there. The city of Little Rock does not have, as far as I know, a facility that has 3 or 4 basketball courts. The last 2 years, we hosted regional tournaments for the National Homeschool Group in Bryant at their facility that they built a couple of years ago. And then this past fall at the beautiful new facility, I think it's called the River Center in Benton, which has 4 courts, and it's beautiful. I urge you to go down there and see it. So anyway, I wanted to come down, and maybe y'all have talked about this before. The city of Little Rock needs a facility to compete with other facilities. We go every March to Springfield, Missouri, to the National Homeschool Basketball Tournament. We almost fill up the arena at Missouri State University for the national championship game. And by the way, one of our homeschool teams won a national championship in March. And we had 361 teams from around the nation. They filled up almost all the hotel rooms in Springfield. Our kids go around the country to play volleyball, basketball, and we need something like that to compete. I was talking with some guys. Tulsa is building a new facility. Conway has 2 gyms that have 3 basketball courts. We have to have our state homeschool basketball tournament in Conway. So anyway, I've probably taken up more time than I was supposed to, but anything you can do to get a nice facility with
Mr. Porter, thank you. And this is something that's been on our agenda for quite some period of time. And there's active discussions going on about it, actually more than just 3 or 4 courts, but more like 8 courts. So we recognize the need, and if I could pull money out of the air and figure out how to fund a $30 million project like that immediately, we would love to do it. So, but we are exploring some opportunities and some options on how we might find some creative financing to get something like that done, not only just through the city board, but also with our AMP commission. And we've had some very active discussions about the need for it, and are going to hopefully in the near term be able to realize this very valuable thing for the city of Little Rock.
I hope so. And again, I will be glad to help in any way I can.
Keith Jackson's got, certainly his park program. I think they've got 3 or 4 courts over there, but that's certainly not enough. We're very helpful in I was able to get Real Deal in the Rock to come to town and move from Fayetteville, and so we employ about 50 courts when Real Deal in the Rock is up. So we'll try and see what we can do to find the money to get this done.
Super. Thank you very much.
Kim Harris.
Hello, my name is Kim Harris, and I was here last week regarding the homeless halfway house. I see your face on this. You don't want to hear it, but
No, go ahead, please.
oh, trust me, I am. So, I received an email that Director Hendricks sent to Bruce Moore, and I spoke to him last week, that he was saying that there's not going to be a halfway house or homeless shelter. But in the email, it states they're going to build some houses to put homeless people in. And I'm here to, for the record again, say no. If y'all to look at on this live view camera that the city have here at Martin Luther King and Roosevelt, it's horrible down there. Why put more people with problems if you're helping them out? Help them out on the other side of 630. Not down in the South End. We have our problems. You know, you were there at the board meeting y'all had at Greater Center Star. Our crime is too high. Please, no. Please, no. I'm not just thinking of me because it's across the street. I'm thinking of the kids that are in our neighborhood. So, for the record again, please, no. Please don't sign. I know it has to go. What am I talking about? Director Hendricks, can you help the mayor out with that?
I believe you felt that there was a location that was going to be a house for the homeless, and that information relative to the sale of that house was incorrect. Is that right, Mr. Moore?
No.
I think.
So once again, I live on 34th and Cross. Across the street from me, there is an empty lot that has already been purchased. He's in the process of cleaning this lot off. You've probably come down there as you stated, you came, but you didn't see this lot. This is not the lot with the garden. This is not that lot. This is the lot on the corner of Cross and 34th. This is the lot I'm referring to. I'm pretty sure y'all gonna do some other things, but I'm still, no. These kids need something else other than being in the South End where nobody's down there helping us already. So I'm begging y'all, please no. No. For the record, 1,000,000 times, no. 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 That's all I can say. No. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have a question for Director
Well,
Hendricks?
I was asking her you was trying to figure out what I was talking about.
Well, Jericho Way or the DePaul, I don't believe have purchased any lots. I'm not sure who purchased the lot you're talking about, but I don't believe it was the DePaul International, which was the source of the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago. Go ahead, Director Hendricks.
The conversation started when one of the employees of the city came and visited with the residents in the area. I knew nothing about it, and we brought it to you all at the last meeting. So this is what's going on. So Bruce knows who that staff person is. Now, where is he getting it from?
But Director Hendricks,
I didn't want to call his name.
but I think that's the point of confusion, because the staff member that inquired on the lot that we own.
And he told them the house would be built.
But that's not the lot that Ms. Harris is talking about.
Is it in that area?
She even just said it wasn't the house that the garden's on. That's the house that the land that we own that the gentleman has planted a very nice garden on.
I know all about it.
Okay. That's not the lot she's talking about.
My question.
She said that, I think it was her brother, told her that this guy has purchased this lot. So this is this conversation we had maybe Thursday. So I was going to inquire into it. But my point to her was that you can't put a homeless shelter in the middle of a neighborhood. You can't put a halfway house in the middle of a neighborhood without having some type of process.
Okay, is there a duplex? Is there?
We just had the conversation last week, and I was going to check into the address, but it's not the house, it's not the lot that we own. Isn't that correct, Ken?
Correct, but I'm just in reference to the email you sent to her back in May. So I didn't get the chance to print it out so I could bring it and you explain it to me.
But that was the lot. Again, I think when she said halfway house, I was thinking she was talking about the lot that we own, but that's not the lot apparently that you were talking about.
Well, I mean, I don't know if who this guy is. Like I've been telling you, I've been trying to catch him.
Right.
You know, I've come home from a part-time lunch on lunch to see if I can find this guy because my brother told me this.
Right.
And he was excited because he wants to be in this halfway house. And I told him no, because I'm against the halfway house and my brother needs a place to stay. But that's a whole nother story. I'm still against it regardless. My brother needs a place to stay.
Mr. Moore, may I ask you, will the house be built down in that area for the homeless? That's the question. Nothing about the garden. I know all about the garden. As long as I've been on this board, there's nothing that I do not know about Ward 1, okay? Because the citizens trust me. That's why I've been here almost 12 years.
Yeah, there was initial dialogue about looking at all R4 properties in the city. And that was an R4 property that was vacant that the city owned. I did not know there was a garden on it.
I'm talking about the garden.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I'm going to have to find out about the lot she's talking about because she said she heard that from her brother. So.
But you do know that the staff person did tell them that a halfway house by.
That's not true. I mean, if that was relayed to him, that was wrong. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Johnny Hassan, on my final card.
Again, God's peace and blessing be upon you, board members, and thank you for your patience in indulging me. Today, I gave the board a copy of a form that I got from the city of Little Rock in reference to my question at another board meeting in reference to the resolution of homicides in the city of Little Rock. So I know that at least one person has got that documentation. But the question I raised was that the expenditure of funds to do traffic citations and drug stops and so forth, while we have in the city of Little Rock have 20 homicides and maybe 21 by today's count. And only 40% of those homicides have been resolved. And 8 homicides out of 20, which equals 40%, meaning that 60% of the homicides in the city of Little Rock has not been a person arrested for. And that's 8 out of the 20. The documents is clear. My question to you is you prioritize arresting someone, Mr. Pierce, for drug offenses rather than targeting this issue of our lack of resolving homicides. And my question to you is that last year we had, 42 homicides? What was the resolution rates of those homicides? The chief came braggingly talking about that we had a 13% reduction in homicides for 2017 and 2018. The difference in the 13% is 3 homicides, 20 versus 23. So my question again, raise our concentration on this particular issue. Right now, we have most of those homicides, 70, 80, maybe 90%, are African Americans. So the wards that the at-large people serve on the 12th Street, in the document, 12th Street is the #1 place of the homicide. It has most of those homicides. Is that not correct? Look at the documentation. You can check it. So my question again, that's a problem with the ward system, okay? If we don't have representative in the wards to speak to our issues, then 9 out of 10, we're not going to get those problems solved. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Thank you. Director Campiris.
Well,
You're recognized.
No, thank
it's
you,
not
sir.
on that issue.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan.
Okay.
Irma sent out many times and said if you have a comment about what she wanted to do, to give her thoughts, and I did. I sent a letter, and I think everybody got a copy of it. And the letter basically addressed what Brian was talking about when he came up, and that is that there are issues that need to be aired. And when he was the president at UALR, people said, do this or don't do that. And as I look back on the time that I have been in some involvement in city government, probably the best lesson I've ever learned is from Jim Lynch. When the Diamond Center came about, basically his point was if you don't have an inclusive process where everybody has a chance of speaking, then you can't make decisions for a whole city. And the form of government, as I said in the letter, is and needs to be the responsibility of the citizens of this city. So I'm going to ask Tom to have a resolution written up that the first order of business, that the new board with the new mayor and whoever constitutes the board in 2019, their first order of business is that they decide on how to form a group of people or forum to study this issue, to have lots of public input, and then bring back to this board a recommendation so that in 2019 it is the will of that group and this board that it goes to the city to be voted on. And hopefully that will allow everybody in the city, not a small group of people, to consider all the alternatives because they are complex. There are many alternatives. There are many ways we can govern, and every so often we need to reevaluate what we're doing. And the only way to honestly do it, to me, is to have an open, honest, studied process where a decision can be made and then let people decide what to do. So, Tom, if you'll draw up that resolution, hopefully we'll vote on it, and that will be the first order of business that the new mayor and the new board in 2019 should consider.
Director Hendricks, you recognize.
I think many of you all, in particular blacks, have heard this. There he goes again. I think you've heard that old adage. He's talking about 2019. Is that what you said? And here we are in 2018, and as a black, I came before you with an ordinance that we could pass. That's all you got to do is pass. So he's saying the same thing that I said, but he's Caucasian, and you know everybody's got to abide by. I mean that. I mean it. So are we voting on Tom? You don't have to worry. I don't even want to see it.
Director Richardson's next.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm in agreement with my colleague, Dean,
about the importance of having an inclusive process, as Brian made reference to, that involves all, not a select few that's appointed or chosen based on a select few of individuals. I think what's interesting, Tom, tell me from across the board, what has happened is that our whole conversation has metastasized from the importance or validity of something to processes. And even that has devolved into the validity or lack of importance from having, Tom, tell from crossing the line, of having at-large directors, because that wasn't what the ordinance was about. And for the life of me, I cannot see how anybody would have a problem, talking about inclusiveness involving all, would have a problem with giving citizens of Little Rock to choose how they want to be governed. And part of it could be with those community forums, I think that Brian made reference to, informational forums, which a number of people made reference to. And Mayor, I told you that was an impetus for my questions to Tom, so that hopefully Chelsea could write about that and we can have an informative process for our whole city of Little Rock. So it's something that's based on actual factual information. I'm troubled, I'm flummoxed how anybody could be adverse to giving the citizens of Little Rock an opportunity to choose how they want to be governed. I believe our electorate is smart enough, wise enough, sagacious enough, Lance, to make the determination, Doris, for what's going to be best for them. And Tom, if I'm crossing over the boundaries, please let me know, because we've already voted on this. But this whole process has jumped all over the place tonight. What we were talking about wasn't about the validity of at-large positions. It wasn't about one individual with respect to at-large position. It was about giving the people a chance to vote, an opportunity to vote on how they want to be governed. And if we get all the information out based on what Thomas provided in the email, in the memo, then people would have enough information to make an informed decision. I trust in the wisdom and the education of the people who live in our city and who make up our electorate. I believe they are smart enough and wise enough to make whatever decision is going to be best for them. And I just find it really interesting that anyone could have a problem or be adverse to giving the people who live in this city an opportunity to vote on how they want to be governed. I don't see what's problematic with that. Anyone to give people a chance to vote for how they want to be governed. So I agree with you, Dean. I agree that we need to have some process, as Brian made reference to, that's going to be inclusive, involving all, not a planning group that involves 15 or 20 people. I think we have more people that register voters in Little Rock than 20 or 30 or 40, whether it's Vision Little Rock, whether it's Future Little Rock, which I don't think that represents the wide diversity of citizens in our city. So with that, I mean, I support you, Dean. I agree wholeheartedly. What I wrote down, you said inclusive process involving all. I think Brian made that reference. I think a couple of people made reference to that. We wasn't talking about the validity of at large. What we were talking about voting on was giving the citizens an opportunity to vote. That's all. That's simple. That's not complicated. And Mayor, that's it for me. Yes, sir.
Okay. Director Compierce, you're next.
The difference, ma'am.
You recognize Director Compierce.
My light was on waiting for you. Go ahead on. That's every time. Go ahead on.
Please.
No, I'm going to take it in the order that people punch their buttons. Okay? We're going to be fair to everybody. Director Compierce, you're recognized. Director Hendricks, I'll be getting to you in a couple of minutes.
The proposal that Irma brought forward, was her idea with input from a small number of people. There was nobody from Ward 2 that I know of, maybe Ken, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or 7. There was no public hearing. There was no public airing. There was no time to say, what is the validity, what's the downside, the weakness, the positive of any shifts in government. what's the way we should elect people? That's what has to come about, and then you decide on election. It is the same thing that Irma has criticized me about all along. You come up with a proposal and you have it done, or you do something without asking me. I'm trying to say that the city board in 2019 needs to come up with an inclusive plan on how to get input from everybody and bring a proposal back. And that's all I'm saying. So Tom, if you'll draft that, I'd appreciate it.
Director Fortson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to prolong this other than just to second what Director Compuris has said. And the difference, Ken, is I don't think anybody has said that they're opposed to giving the public an opportunity and a plebiscite to vote on something. What I objected to is you got an either or. Either go down road A or road B. There's been no opportunity for a study involving people of diverse backgrounds, no opportunity to get multiple input, people of different gender, different race, different ages, different geography, because we're a younger city, we're a growing city, and all those people need to have input into what we do rather than an either or that was put together without a great deal of participation from the rest of the body. So that's why I second Dr. Compuris' idea and think we need to go forward in a deliberate manner with facts and not opinions.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn.
My light is on. You said I would speak.
I understand that it is. I'm going to ask for a clarification from our city attorney on whether or not that takes precedence.
Well, my light was on, Tom. Be fair.
I believe it does, but I want to
my light was even
clarify
on
that.
before Fortune's light was on. I don't need, Tom, I know the situation that you're in. You need to be quiet. You need to be quiet because he's telling you what to do.
Right.
Okay, but anyway, what I'm going to say is that.
Well, wait a second.
See, you told me my light was
Let's
on.
respect the process.
No, you.
There's a
I know
bit of
you're the mayor, but you are not
What I don't
God.
remember is this: is that when you recognized Dr. Compuris, you made the statement.
I can't hear you, Tom.
When you recognized Dr. Compuris, you made the statement that you were going to recognize Director Hendricks next.
Yeah, he did.
The motion has intervened. I think that the motion to.
Yeah, that's not fair.
All right, the second's been withdrawn. Go ahead, Director Hendricks. You're recognized.
The only thing that I wanted to say is that I want the viewing audience to know that this doesn't end right here, and that what Dean is saying, that he said to me, Dean doesn't even talk to me, and I don't talk to him, so I don't know why he's sitting up here lying. Okay? I don't bother these people. Okay? So that's what I wanted to say. I don't know when I have had a conversation with Dean. We may wave at each other, something like that. These white people act like they're afraid that I'm going to say something. Oh, I read your letter. I read that letter. Yeah, but no, you were giving the board the impression. But I want you all to know that I sent each one of these board members an email today that included God in the picture. I'm not worried about these people, because what I think is best for this city, it will happen. That's it.
Thank you, Director Hendricks. Director Wyrick, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe Dean's on the right track. It's a complex issue, and I think a lot of people need to come together to make the decision as to what we send to the voters. I don't think anybody up here is afraid to send it to the voters. We had 3 iterations, I think, of ordinances that came across, and I think Irma had a little trouble in what she wanted to present to us with 3 of those. So I think we're on the right track, Dean, by doing that, so I support it. Thank you.
Director Richardson. You're recognized.
Thank you, sir. My last point. I think when we talked about this the first time, and I think my recommendations didn't say I was supporting it or not, but I had recommendations that part of the process would be we'd have community forums, informational meetings across the city per ward to inform people, which was the impetus for this information I requested. This wasn't in isolation. It was just to have that process be a part of what you all were talking about before the actual election. That's all. I move to adjourn.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. We're in adjournment. Thank you all.